So great to see so many people here today. My name is Corey Reddercup. I'm the CEO of the Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce, and I am so pleased to be hosting tonight's event. Before we start, I did want to recognize that tonight's event is being held on the traditional lands of the Kwantlen, Katsi, Semiahmoo, and Matspi peoples, and we appreciate the opportunity to conduct our work on these lands, particularly this week as we head towards September 30th, this Friday, and the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. For 91 years, the Langley Chamber has been the voice of local business, a platform for collaboration and connection with Langley business people, and an advocate for our strong and diverse business community. We're a strictly nonpartisan organization, so tonight we're pleased to be holding this Community Candidates Forum to provide a way for township residents and businesses to hear from those seeking to serve our community as mayor and city councilors. If you have friends or family who weren't able to make it tonight, or you aren't able to stay the whole time, don't worry, we are recording today's session, so we will be having a video posted later this week. So you can, or if you're here and you stay the entire time, you just want to watch it all again for fun, you can watch it. You can watch the recording later this week. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you need any bio breaks, we do have washrooms. There's a men's washroom. The entrance is right back that way. Women's is off to the side here. We do have some coffee and tea and water at the back. Really want to underscore this bit. I want this to be a respectful engagement for our candidates and for your fellow attendees. So please, we'd like everyone to, as we're going through the questions here and everyone's speaking, we want to have them to have the opportunity to speak uninterrupted, and for those in the audience to listen uninterrupted. I think the beauty of our system is if you don't agree with what you're hearing tonight, you will have the ultimate power in a few weeks to do something about that at the ballot box. Right now, if you watch your news, there are people fighting and dying for the right that we all enjoy. So let's respect that freedom tonight and have a respectful discourse. Just a little bit of background. So the Chamber invited all declared candidates to attend. So we contacted everybody when the list was made final, and everyone was invited to participate tonight. Due to the number of candidates, we will be calling the candidates up in a few different stages in several different groups. As you can see, we don't have 28 chairs here, but all the candidates will get stage time. All the candidates will have the same number of questions asked. Speaking of questions, we have sought questions for several weeks through social media, through our website, through email. We got a ton of them. So all those questions, ideas, topics, many of them kind of galvanized or coalesced around certain topics. So we've taken all the submissions that have come in, and we have developed our questions for the candidates today, which have not been shared with any of the candidates. No one knows what the questions are in advance, but we have shared the topics of the questions, which will be development and housing, transportation, crime and safety, parks, rec and the environment, taxes and budgets, and governing and leadership. So those are the categories which the candidates will see questions coming from tonight. So we're going to dive in here pretty quick, but before we do that, I would like to invite our presenting partner for today's event, the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. I want to thank them for helping make tonight's event happen, and I want to invite local realtor Candy Ashdown with the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board to say a few words of welcome. There you are, Candy, come on up.
Good evening. My name is Candy Ashdown. I'm a realtor and a member of the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board. I'm here today, I believe, but I have not seen her yet, with my fellow realtor, Tammy Evans. Is Tammy here? I think she was on a ferry on her way home. So I believe she'll be here in a bit. The Fraser Valley Real Estate Board represents approximately 4,800 realtors throughout 7 communities south of the Fraser River, including Abbotsford, Mission, Langley City and Langley Township, North Delta, Surrey, and White Rock. Last year, the Fraser Valley Board celebrated its centennial. For over 100 years, members have played a vital role to help strong and vibrant communities. Here in Langley, we work in tandem with our local public and private sector counterparts to guide, advise, and protect families and individuals in one of the biggest decisions of their lives, buying a home. Our board has been supporting these types of meetings since 2001 because we feel it's important to know who we're voting for, I think I'm getting too close to that, in an election and what they will bring to council. The people we elect to be our representatives will make decisions on our behalf and on our future. We're also here to pose questions that we feel are relevant to the community and listen to the ideas and concerns of others. We appreciate and thank the Langley Chamber of Commerce for making it possible for us to hear from candidates this evening, and we look forward to the meeting and dialogue to follow. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Awesome. thank you, Candy, and to the Fraser Valley Real Estate Board for your support tonight. So I think that's going to be the end of that you're going to see anyone at the podium tonight. So I'm going to be taking my seat here to moderate today's discussion, and we'll be having our candidates come up in just a moment. So we know who's at the tables here. We're going to start with some introductions. So we're going to give you up to a minute here for each of the candidates to provide a 60-second introduction to the audience of who you are, a little bit about your background, and why you're running for council this year. So I will start with Patrina Arnason.
Good evening. Oh. It says it's on. But there we go. Sorry. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you here tonight. My name is Councillor Patrina Arnason. I've been a councillor in the township for 2 terms, and I'm seeking my 3rd term. It's really important, I think, that the community is very engaged in all of the interests of the township at this time. We very much are in a critical time in our development as we urbanize and continue to find the right balance between our rural environment as well as our built environment. I have a bachelor's of studies in social sciences as well as a master's degree in science and a lawyer's degree. I use all of these actually on your behalf in my job as a township councillor. I'm working towards climate change initiatives for seniors, affordable housing, more parks, green space, and all those things that I think we need to focus on in the township in the coming years. Thank you.
Perfect. Very good. We'll give a round of applause for our first 1 minute. There you go. You did that well. Thank you, Councillor. And I'm going to move on to, for introductions, Tim Bailey.
Good evening. My name is Tim Bailey. I'm running for council, and I bring some kind of unique skills to it. I'm an old guy, so I've been kicking around for a long time, and some of those skills are as I retired after over 27 years as a firefighter in Surrey, where I was a captain. I also have sat on a lot of the boards dealing with it. I was an instructor for the JIBC, and I also was granted Vice President Emeritus for the BC PFFA because I was the lead on our presumptive cancer and heart legislations. I also have done just about 30 years on the street with the homeless in Surrey, where I've sat on various boards and participated with some programs that I started. The last special skill that I bring is I coached youth sports for a period of over 40 years, and I realized the importance of youth sports forming better people as children. Thank you.
We'll just continue down here, and Michael Chang, you can go next.
Okay, good evening. My name is Michael Chang. I'm running for the Township of Langley Council. I immigrated to Canada 2006 and dreamed of having a better life for myself and my family. And currently I'm serving as a member of the Multicultural Advisory Council of BC and the Township Park Committee, and also I'm an honorary ambassador of the City of Seoul in Korea and Gardner County. And locally, I'm an executive director of the Korean Veteran Association. I try to support our veterans and seniors as much as I can. And I deeply commit to the community service and have worked with the variety of local organizations to champion diversity, the veterans and seniors' rights, and keen on education for our youth. I'm running for the Township Council, and we fight for the meaningful action on the issue that matters to people of Township of Langley and paving the way for more affordable senior housing and build a robust and sustainable.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. Cameron.
Hi everyone, I'm Scott Cameron, a 30-year resident here in the Township of Langley. I currently live in Walnut Grove with my wife and my 1-year-old son Maxwell, who probably is going to walk tonight for the first time, so we're going to keep this short. But other than that, I'm the head professional at the Redwoods Golf Course in Langley, where I also own co-own the Fletcher Cameron Golf Academy there as well with my partner there. A couple of years ago, if you would ask me why I was going to run for council, it would have been because of affordable housing. And I can assure you, just through conversations with people in the community, leaders like Rich Coleman, that you can't run on one idea. You have to make sure that if you're going to run on affordable housing, you have to make sure that we have the proper first responders in place to help those people. We also have to make sure that we have the amenities in place as well. So, long story short, I'm running because I'm passionate about the Township of Langley, and I hope to get your vote on October 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And AJ Cheema.
Good evening, everyone. My name is AJ Cheema. Thank you to the Langley Chamber of Commerce and everyone that's come out here today to listen to the candidates debate. Like I said, my name is AJ. I live in Savin River. I'm a farmer business owner there, building a winery and bistro across from Crowsberry Farms. What I bring to the possibility of being councillor for you is strong intergovernmental relations. I worked for the federal government for a number of years in public services, procurement, treasury board, and also defense procurement. I'm a youth soccer and hockey coach. I have 2 young sons. And basically, I'm a concerned citizen. We're growing at a very fast rate here at the Township of Langley, and unfortunately, we're still campaigning on items that we're campaigning on in 2011. So basically, what I want to see is that we have matched the infrastructure, community amenities, and the requirements that we have for our fast-growing city, and I'd love to be your voice if given the opportunity. Thank you.
And thank you, AJ. We're going to move down to this end of the table here, and with Dinesen.
Hey everyone, thanks so much to the Chamber for hosting this. Thanks everyone for being here. My name is Dinesen. I'm a local entrepreneur, business owner. I actually co-own a business with my wife. It's called Bear Woods. It's an e-commerce business. And then I'm also part owner of Body Smart Health and Fitness out in North Langley. I've been an entrepreneur in Langley for almost 30 years now. Previous to this, I actually built BackCheck with my brother, Canada's largest pre-employment background checking company, and through that learned extensively the importance of bootstrapping, which means making every dollar stretch. So as your councillor, why I'm running is to cut red tape, to innovate, and to make sure that your tax dollars are treated with respect, because every dollar counts. As innovators cutting red tape, we plan to pass on those savings to you, the consumer, to make housing and other things in the community more affordable. It's going to be an honor to serve. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Stephen. And I've got next Alex Joehl.
My name's Alex Joehl. I live in Murrayville. I have a wife and son and am a community volunteer, just like so many people here. We have a real vested interest in making sure this place succeeds. But a city's success should be in the private sector, not government jobs. And it's important that we make sure that we shrink the size of government whenever possible, and we need to stop the growth. Cutting taxes is very difficult to do, and a lot of people here are going to try and talk about cutting red tape and trying to trim back taxes. But unfortunately, there's just not a lot of discretionary spending within the Township of Langley budget. So what we can do is make sure it doesn't get bigger. And I'm here to guarantee that that doesn't happen. Businesses struggled during the lockdowns of 2020 and 2021, and I'm here to promise that that will never happen again if I'm elected to the Township of Langley Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And Britt Gardner, you can go there. And that one should be live as well, yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Britt Gardner. I am a 3rd generation Township of Langley resident. I grew up in the Glen Valley area, later Aldergrove, and now I am recently in Fort Langley where I am raising my 3 children. I've always been interested in the future and how we can impact it. For a few years, I was the Chief of Staff at Social Impact Capital, which is an investment fund in New York. And we invested in social impact deals that can produce outside returns and generate positive social good. Recently, I became involved in municipal politics. I got involved during the last election, assisting with a campaign, and I have volunteered for a number of community groups, including advocating for bringing passenger rail to the south of Fraser. I look forward to investing in our community through our municipal powers that we have to create affordable housing, specifically non-market housing, which is really important to take the desperation out of the market, as well as protecting our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. And Rebecca Darnell.
Last but not least, how do you turn this on? Is this working?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you so much to everybody for coming out tonight and not taking your precious personal time away from I'm sorry, I'm having some alarm issues at my office. Carrie's got my cell phone. I am a lawyer. I came here 27 years ago when I founded my law firm. and I'm a certified mediator and arbitrator with the Law Society of British Columbia. I have practiced here. I've also gained over 40 years of governance and board experience, giving back to this community, both with my time, and I've certainly made some significant contributions. I've been with the Hospital Foundation. I managed Langley Community Services Society through our arson in 2005, and I'm very interested in the infrastructure issues that we have, as well as the traffic development, and I can bring honesty, integrity, and transparency to the council, which I think we desperately need.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate that.
I'm sorry I went over that.
You had an alarm.
I told you so.
You had an alarm, no worries. All right, so let's dive into our questions here. So what's going to happen is we're going to be asking a question to groups of 5 or 4 of you at a time. So the first question is going to be going to Katrina Arnason, then Tim Bailey, Scott Cameron, Michael Chang, and Rebecca Darnell. So that's the order we're going to be going in. And this is coming from our development and housing category. The Langley Township is now the fastest growing by percentage city or community in the region. So there is a growing mix of housing types and density coming into Langley. But what is the right mix? Where should we be putting towers? Where should townhomes be going? And where should we be protecting single family developments? So Katrina, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you very much. This is a really critical question. I believe the Township of Langley, a lot of our plans that we've had are somewhat dated in the sense that we didn't have a housing crisis when we first started out. I believe that we should be looking, rather than the continued pace of growth, to look to up-to-date those plans, because in fact, they don't adequately consider the environment. They don't consider homelessness. They don't consider affordability. They don't consider seniors. So what I would suggest is, I don't think there's a magic formula, but I'm very much in favor of inclusionary zoning. Every time we put something new into the township, it should actually contain a formula where people are having opportunities for below market rental, for affordable housing, and for accessible housing for our citizens, not just for them, but for people that are coming to our community. Otherwise, I don't think that we are doing anyone any favor, so that people can live in the community and continue to live where they are comfortable to age in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tim, your next question, and it's where should we be putting towers versus townhomes versus single family?
Well, and the biggest thing when it comes to that is, first you have to do some comprehensive planning, and it has to be modern and up to date. The second part of that is, when you do the plan, then you have to follow it. Instead of doing this spot development that's all over the place, and even some areas like Brookswood and that don't have any comprehensive planning, you got to make the plans first in consultation with people who know what they're doing, then you have to follow it. An example is, if you're not planning a community completely, like Willoughby right now, first responders and emergency services can't service that area at all. And also some of the other lacks of planning that I'm seeing are putting things like manufactured home parks at risk. Those are a real favorite for developers to go and take, and they're an essential part of housing, especially for seniors and people with low incomes. Thanks.
Thank you. We're moving on to next question. Next person in this order is Scott Cameron.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is something that I definitely resonate here with. It is something that's close to home for sure, where I am in a situation where a lot of my friends have moved from the area, or have moved, or trying to move back, and they can't find a place to live or to rent. So this is probably the first time, I would say, in the Township of Langley's history where we have what I'm going to refer to as the sandwich generation, where we need to be able to have a plan where we can put all of these in place. We need to make sure that, as somebody with a parent who's in their 60s there, is able to provide housing for somebody who's younger for them at their house, or for their parents or something, as opposed to just kind of leaving people in a situation where they're living on ends meet, and it's a difficult situation for them. So we definitely need to explore some opportunities with these townhouses, with residential, with towers. I'm not saying I agree with towers, but we definitely need to explore these options so that we can all live here.
Thank you. And next we'll be going to Michael Chang and then Rebecca Darnell. So Michael, question is the same question. Where should we be putting towers versus townhomes versus single-family development?
Okay, so I think that the township is one of the fast growing municipality in BC. We have about 6,000 to 7,000 newcomers every year. So my plan is we try to make the kind of master plan for all the different forms of housing with the high-rise and townhouse and single home, and to make it with all the amenities and the safeties behind that project has to put together. So because I'm raising my 2 kids and both of them is kind of becoming adult right now, and even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the surrounding was quite different with even just 10 years ago. So I try to make we will have more population coming in through our township, and we should have a kind of master plan for each community. And each project has to come with all the inputs from our voters and our people. So we have to get a better idea what they actually feel every day is alive and about what kind of housing there is for the future of the township. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And last on this question, Rebecca Darnell.
Thank you. The question really, I mean, it's a pretty large question, Corey, but we've already got enough towers. I don't think we need another one at this time. We need to do a core review of our development policies so that we can decide what the entire township needs, as well as looking at the individual neighborhoods. Now, of course, I reside in the Brookswood Cedar Ridge area. It's near and dear to my heart, and I know that that's a huge issue in that neighborhood right now. We need to be sure that we are preserving our canopy, and by that, I mean the vegetation that provides oxygen to our community. We have to look at the climate change and how climate change affects what's going on. We've just come through 2 years of drought. We've had 1 atmospheric river. Can we sustain, can we survive through those? We need to build with those things in mind, and we need to ensure the canopy to preserve our lifestyle.
Thank you very much.
Or life itself.
We heard from a number of parents who are faced with limited access to sports fields. We've had anecdotes of 7 and 8-year-olds who have practice time at 8 or 9 at night because they can't get anything else for the soccer fields. Would you build more recreation facilities? Do you think we need that? If so, where and how would you pay for it? AJ Cheema.
Is this on? Great question. Something close to home for me. I'm a father, like I said, of 2 boys who I coach soccer and hockey, and it's one of the campaign items that I've been very passionate about. Over the last year, I've seen and spoke to many sports user groups here, and Langley United Soccer Association being one, about the problem that we're facing as far as growth, and currently this year having children being turned away because we don't have the facilities for them to play soccer, ball hockey. We don't have the ice sheets available, with the exception of private ones for children to enroll in sports. Sports are so important for the youth, and it shapes the leaders in the future as far as individual, team, problem solving, and just being strong community members. And as far as we're paying for them, I mean, we have a plan. There's different options there. I can't really get on into it with 8 seconds, but if you look at our website, we have a plan for all of that. We have promised to build some soccer fields and ice sheets for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. We're coming down to the other end of the table here to Stephen Dinesen. Same question to you.
Thank you. So one of the things I want to make sure we do is not raise the taxes. And it's all good to talk about more fields, but let's do it smart. Let's use land that we already own, like the retention ponds. Let's build green space, park space, recreation facilities, such as tracks and fields. We can put tracks and fields at every high school, and that's what Elevate Langley is committed to do. We can use land that doesn't require a new capital investment, and we can get a lot more fields built. I fully support the sheets that are already planned for this great facility here. This is a great example of a facility that has brought people close to one region, but I want to see us build facilities throughout Langley, not just focused here on Willoughby where the traffic is already problematic and needs to be dealt with. So let's see us use retention ponds, let's see us use land we already own. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. We don't need to buy new land because that will raise taxes.
Thank you. Moving on to Britt Gardner.
Yeah, so amenities are really important and should be paid for by development, and we need to modernize our community amenity contribution program and formalize it in a way that follows the best practices elsewhere. We shouldn't have to be playing catch up with our facilities. And as far as public recreation goes, I think swimming lessons are a key example right now. I'm a mom of 3. It's almost impossible to get your kids into swimming lessons anywhere in the Township of Langley. And it's not just for a lack of facilities, it's because of staffing issues, chronic staffing issues that predated COVID as well. So I would like to change the culture in Township of Langley where we invest in our staffing in these facilities. These should be important jobs. Community centers are very important to the community, not just for children, but for seniors of all ages. It's a public health issue, and I think we really need to invest in staffing for these facilities.
Thank you, Britt. And last candidate on this question, Alex Joehl.
So yes, taxes. We don't want to raise taxes, obviously. And the other alternative to that is to increase the DCCs and the CACs. But those are input costs to building a home. And if you're starting to increase how much it costs to build the home, you're going to find that the cost of living goes up for everyone. So what we need to do is we need to really assess how badly do we need these fields, these ice rinks. My son plays ice hockey in the Township of Langley. He plays ball hockey, he plays roller hockey there, and he plays baseball in the city. But there's no lack of time to play. There's no lack. When it comes down to it, yes, if there were more facilities, maybe the cost would be driven down if there was less demand. But we really need to think that the user should be paying. The parents should be paying for their children. If we want to get new facilities, parents can fundraise, associations can fundraise. And for those families that find it hard to pay for it, there are great programs available to help.
People, and we've had a number of these comments come through, people who have lived in Langley for decades are reporting seeing crime, graffiti, suspicious activity more than ever before and in areas they didn't see before. Do you share this perspective that crime is on the rise? And if so, what are you going to do about it on council so that we can address the fears and public safety of the people who set these questions in? Tim.
Well, I've got to say that I'm pretty lucky. I come from a different field of emergency services, but on our team with the contract at Langley, we've got a police officer. Not only a police officer, but she's worked down on the east side for about 20 years. So I'm a strong supporter, having been working on 135A Street in Wally and seeing what's going on, is making sure that the community police are in place. You've got to have boots on the ground with that. And the second part of that is people on the street understand their rights, but they don't fully understand their responsibilities. And that is a very large part of what's got to go on. I'm a big fan of making sure that there are some innovative ways, such as community service and all that. And when you do find the chronic offenders, then you have to get the judges and that kind of stuff to step up the enforcement, and not only the enforcement, but you also have to step up the penalties so they recognize their responsibilities to society.
Thank you, Tim. Moving on to Scott Cameron, our question on crime and safety.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So, yeah, this is definitely something that's on the rise, or it appears to be on the rise. And one of the ways we can definitely work towards this is obviously having increased visibility with our police officers. The other way that I think we can all agree and has become successful here in the city of Surrey there is what is referred to as Car 67, which, as I'm sure many of you are aware of, there are majority of phone calls that come in to police officers and police detachments that are not just criminal activity, but they are also mental health crises. So with Car 67, what they do is they have a trained mental health expert on these cars, which go to these situations or these calls to help these police officers, which in turn, if these officers do not have to go on so many of these calls, they'll be able to actually be out in the community doing what they are trained to do and do best, and that is to service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving to Michael Chang.
Okay, so first time I came here was 2006, and one of the reasons was safety. And now in the last couple of years, and since the pandemic, and the crime rate has been going up. And I think that we, as a township, and we need to work closely with the RCMP and try to make the we have a crime watch in some part of the community and try to bring into more information about what is happening in our community. And we have to work across the ICMP and also for the, there was so many issues, not only for the crime itself, but there was a mental health issue and so the drug overdose issue. So we have to look maybe find a kind of task team to find the right relationship with what is happening in our community and how we closely work with our city and other aspect of the crime that we're facing, and we will have a much better in the next few years.
Thank you, Michael. On this question, we're moving to Rebecca Darnell.
Thank you. I actually worked at Main and Hastings in the courthouse there in the 1980s for 8 years. I have watched the decline in our society firsthand, and that started when they closed Riverview. So in order to really, really start to address this, we need to address the mental health issues. We need to address domestic violence in our communities. We need to address it, and we need to make sure that the police on the front lines, who are not necessarily responding as they properly should, they need to get into this. They need to make an investigation. Property crime is virtually ignored in Langley. I've been the victim of property crime in my commercial building at least 5 times in the last year. We need to get substance abuse counseling out there as well. Mental health, substance abuse, that's what our issues are. And let's get more firefighters.
Thank you, Rebecca. And last on this crime question is Katrina Arnason.
Yes, thank you. I just want to comment as an incumbent that the Township of Langley has done, I think, a really excellent job in terms of trying to come to terms with the new changes that are coming to our community. Unfortunately, with urbanization and more people coming to our community, we do have challenges. So some of us have real-time experience in dealing with the community, such as a couple of weeks ago, I went to the Langley Meadows community and I talked to people on the ground there who are dealing with substance abuse, with mental health issues, of people moving into their community that have some challenges. The police are knowledgeable. Actually, the community is quite involved, but it is something that needs to have oversight, and the township does have a liaison committee that is working. Unfortunately, with COVID, it's been a challenge. I just want to say, I think we're very informed. I think we are doing a good job, but we need to do more, and I certainly support looking at all opportunities for integration of all the services to help this challenging problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina Arnason. We've heard stories of businesses making lease payments for a whole year, but they can't open their doors because they're waiting for their permits from the township. And the timeline for residential development approvals can be even longer. Many of the candidates in this election have talked about speeding up development approvals. Is this an issue for you? And if so, what does that mean? And what actions would you take to actually speed this up? Stephen Dinesen.
Yes, that we hear about all the time. And permits need to be faster. I believe it's Calgary that turns permits around in a couple of weeks. We can get there. We just have to look at areas to cut red tape. Permits need to be issued, they might be categorized. There's all sorts of efficiencies we can do. We can use electronic means to improve the permit process. Housing, we have a housing problem, right? So let's get those permits through faster. If there's zoning issues, that's a separate matter. But if it fits the zone, if it fits the category, let's get those permits out the door. If there's delays, we got to figure out why. We've got, if there's staffing issues, we need more staff in the township. I understand there's job openings. We need to fill those. So let's get the staff up. Let's cut the red tape. We can absolutely deal with this. Many jurisdictions have done so successfully. Let's go and find out what they do well, and we do well too.
Thank you, Stephen. Britt Gardner, we're going to come to you next on this question.
Yeah, I think this is a multifaceted question. Staffing is a big part of it as well, making sure we have enough staff to handle the volume of permits that are coming in. Modernizing the process. There have been recommendations that there should be digital kind of oversight to this so that we know where they are in the queue and what's going on. And then for all forms of development permits in general, I think that if something complies to the plans, like in an OCP, for example, if you're bringing a permit forward for any reason, and if it complies, that can be delegated to staff if it isn't already. So nothing should be held up waiting for council in that regard if it is compliant. And for business permits and whatnot, I absolutely think we need to speed that up any way we can if that is within our power to do.
Thank you. Alex, you do the question again, are you good?
Yeah, no.
Okay, over.
Yes, an as-of-right system. Japan has succeeded in driving down the cost of housing. They build a lot more homes, they have a much denser population, and yet they do not struggle with housing affordability that they do. Even in Tokyo, is a city much denser than Township of Langley or even Vancouver. And what it comes down to is a lot like a couple of people have said already at the table, this isn't new. If it is already within the regulations, it should be able to move past move forward before getting the political approval. So by simplifying our zoning, that is the very first step. We have more than 24 types of zoning in the Township of Langley, and that needs to be cut in half immediately. We can learn a lot from not just a place like Japan, where the federal government did a top-down fix, but we can learn just from our neighbors in the city of Langley, who have a very short turnaround. Thank you.
Thank you, and then lastly over to AJ Cheema.
Okay, great. Thank you. So another issue that I have dealt with personally, one of the reasons that I originally became frustrated with the system, 2.5 years it took to get my building permit and endorsement from council in the Township of Langley, which resulted in a $2.5 million construction cost increase for my project. 12 months for my neighbor to get a garage permit. So these things are obviously unacceptable for those that are trying to move forward with their businesses, that are trying to build homes. So we have a plan to tackle that, and not a plan to just help special interest groups who can get certain high density projects done in 3 months while people are waiting for 12 months to build a home or a garage. So we're going to attack that head on. It's something that is close to, with the contract of Langley, we have a plan. Please check our website and you'll see that. But building permits are an issue, and they should be fair for everyone and streamlined accordingly.
And the question is from our Parks and Recreation category. The township boasts about its ample parks and trails, but we had many comments and complaints that many of these trails are in truth largely cement sidewalks. What do you think of our parks and trails system, and what should be done to increase green spaces and develop parks in our community, especially in the Yorkson and Willoughby areas?
Thanks, Corey. Yeah, definitely there is areas in the Township of Langley that are, like you said, covered in cement. And one way to do this is with, kind of like somebody already hit on it earlier today, is with retention ponds that we have in our developmented areas that are being used for nothing other than their purpose. And you can totally cover those things. You can build parks on those things. You can build green spaces. You probably can build trails going across them. So that would be one way to utilize a space that's not being used for anything, would be to utilize those retention ponds. You can also put sports fields on those as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Rebecca, coming to Rebecca Darnell in the middle here.
Thank you very much, Corey. Honestly, we have to look at what we've got and you know, jackhammers maybe, that's a good idea. Let's get rid of some of that concrete. Concrete is not good for the environment, nor is it certainly doesn't promote play or activity. The retention ponds that Scott just talked about are a great idea. Let's use those if we can. Also, we have to look at as well, though, is the impact of converting retention ponds. What will that do to us from an environmental perspective? We have to look at that as well. If we are in these community areas that are already very built up and very dense, it's going to be difficult to find space. So what we need to do there is we need to look at the space in the closer communities, and how about providing some transit so we can get from the denser communities to the less dense communities, so our kids and we can use those in a more appropriate way.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. Michael Chang, your turn on this question.
Hi.
There we go.
Okay, so we have to look at the kind of bigger picture for the parks and recreation and sports area, certain communities have some issues. So I think the park passway should be environmental friendly and has kind of belong to with the nature we have. And some of the park area is close to the sports field and amenity area and some of the residential area. And we kind of look really into the, what's the biggest issue that people actually walk every day when their park has a, has a problem. So we have to look at all kind of different angles to look at some park areas and some other areas with because a lot of sports fields are currently built right now, and most of the young people and our youth is using, and we need to have the better plan for them in the next few years to look at what is kind of different options we have. If we have some money to change some of the things with these non-environment materials we use, we have to change. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Katrina Arnason, we're coming to you on the question of parks and trails, especially in the Willoughby and Yorkton area. And then Tim, you'll be wrapping this up.
Thank you very much for the question. As part of the TPAC committee, the Tree Protection Advisory Committee, there were a lot of really informed discussions, and a lot of it revolved around the fact that we don't have enough parks. I just finished writing a questionnaire that talked about what should we do about that. We need to update our parks master plan. We aren't preparing for enough parks in our community. If we learned anything from COVID, one of the things we know is that people need to go outdoors, have recreation, and have an opportunity within a relatively short distance of where they live. And if we are building compact communities, we have to make sure that we are generating enough through our development process the appropriate amenities in order to purchase those lands. We cannot continue to go back to our taxpayers and continue to raise the rates when growth needs to pay for itself. So I think parks, green space, green infrastructure, all the things we've been talking about are really important, but we have to find a way to fund them and just start building. Thank you.
Thank you, Katrina Arnason. And we're moving to Tim Bailey for the last on this question.
During the pandemic, we saw what happened when you have increased density, and the people that are in those condos and that need to get out into the public, and they have to be able to walk, they have to be able to experience green spaces and that. If you look at the trail system in Township of Langley, it's segmented. I ride my bicycle around, and you have to kind of hop from one to another. So connecting those trails together and trying to find the land, like in Willoughby right now and Walnut Grove, trying to find land to be able to do things because of poor planning in the past is really complicating this issue. So what you have to do is you have to look at how can we build structures where people can walk, where people can ride their bicycles, and get out of their cars and be able to enjoy the green. I'm lucky, I live down by Campbell Valley. They set records during the pandemic on the attendance down there, and that's an indication of what's to come when our density gets so crowded like it's going to be.
Many Langley parents have voiced concern to us that their children won't ever be able to afford to live in Langley and will have to move further afield to find a place of their own. Many people noted that they chose to move to Langley in the first place for affordability are now stunned at the prices of real estate here. What do you think should be done, could be done at the local level to address the spiraling cost of housing, and what would you bring to the council table on this file?
Ooh, I'm glad I got this question. So the UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities, just passed a motion that allows mandatory inclusionary housing, which means that now we finally have the tools as a township to actually insist upon non-market housing in any development that comes forward. And this is a win-win situation. There's many people that want to develop and maybe they want to go a little taller or a little bigger. Well, they can do that in exchange for providing permanent, affordable housing to our communities. And this is something that doesn't just benefit the next generation, it'll benefit people right away today, people who are retired on a fixed income and can no longer afford rent. The fact is, there are a lot of people whose needs will never be served by the market. And we have to accept that, and we need to adopt housing best practices. And around the world, this means a percentage of non-market housing, which takes desperation out of the market. Thank you.
Thank you, Britt. Alex, Joel.
More. We need more housing, right? Supply, it's a huge part of the equation. There are a lot of people, though, that don't want the price of housing to come down. A lot of people in this room, myself included, part of my retirement plan is my home. Got a lot of equity in there that I'm really hoping is going to still be there when I get to 65. So if we drive down that price, we're gonna have a lot of people pushing back against overbuilding our neighborhoods if it starts driving down our price of housing. So we need to factor in is like, how much are we going to engage the community with these decisions? So as a council, you have to make a decision. Are you fighting for the voters and the people that are loudest, which in many cases are usually homeowners and people who have a vested interest? Or are we going to fight for all the people that want to come and live in this wonderful city? And I suggest that we find ways to build more housing as fast as possible and definitely get that price down so that, yes, my son will also be able to live in the Township of Langley one day. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And we're coming down to the end here to AJ Cheema on this question.
Okay. Thank you for the question. So one of the first things, we've had some issues is with our NCPs, right? So Brookswood, for example, an NCP that we have to look at. We have to look at when we are building these community plans, where to utilize multi-density, how we're building it out. The other big thing is agricultural land. So right now on our agricultural land, for a family that has a farm such as ourselves, a secondary house on that property, it's 900 square feet. Why aren't we allowed to build a secondary house with a little bit of a larger envelope for our children in our future, which would help affordability for our young families, for our young kids, those that are continuing to work on in their farms or in those areas. So that's sort of the plan, but we have to sit down and be able to look at our community plans as well. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, EJ. And then coming down to this end of the table now with Stephen Dinesen.
All right, well actually I'm gonna agree with AJ. We need to be, I live on agricultural land in Milner, and the secondary dwelling that we're allowed is just too small to be functional and provide good housing for the community. I also want to see, as I mentioned earlier, cut red tape and streamline processes. We have to realize that when we make it easier for developers to get things done and get things done quicker, there are direct costs that are passed on to consumers. That makes housing more affordable. We can also diversify rental options, and I think we need to do this on a community-by-community basis. So the Elevate Team Langley wants to take a regional approach within Langley to what type of rental properties can be discussed in those areas. We also need to make Langley a place for innovation. There are technologies out there that will reduce energy costs, that will reduce construction costs, that will improve insulation. Let's make it easy for development, both new and existing, to improve efficiency in the whole process. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen Dinesen. And maybe I can ask you to join me in a round of applause for our first group of candidates. You handled that very well, our timing, but thank you very much. So, thank you, candidates there. We're now moving on to our second group of council candidates. So if I could please ask to come to the front, Steve Ferguson, Suitman Gill, Margaret Kunst, Michael Pratt, Kathy MacDonald, Barb Martens, Karen Moraes, Carrie Poitras, and Cam Respondek. Maybe I'll start with Steve Ferguson. Talk first on my list here. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, the Chamber. My name is Steve Ferguson, and I am serving my 8th term on Township Council, and I've worked with 5 mayors. I'm not apologetic to that. I've worked on task forces for finance, housing, agriculture and rural, sports organizations, master plans. I've worked on many things. And the thing is, we've learned, by the way, a little housekeeping, I'm married, my wife's here tonight, we got 3 kids, we live in the Brookswood area, I've been here 40 years. I'm a retired teacher, I taught for 33 years, I'm not a career politician. But what I can tell you is we are at a crossroads, folks. And everything since COVID has changed. And some folks have said, geez, we need to slow down. We can't do anything right now. Folks, we need to make changes for park and recreation, for home ownership, for zoning, for rezoning, for cutting the time it takes to building permits, and the list goes on. What a good looking group of people here, by the way, tonight. Thank you very much, Steve Ferguson. I'm running with the Eric Woodward team. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'm going to move to Suitman Gill.
Hi, everyone. Is this doing? Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Suitman Gill. I'm running with Team Elevate Langley here for council. I'm running because I'm trying to bring a new face to this Langley community and listen to what our community needs and hear our problems. I am agricultural background. I live in South Langley. We are blueberry farmers there. Our farm name is BKS Blueberry Farms. the local resident, and I hear that there are many problems in our community, and I want to come in and bring a change to our community and listen to our community and solve these problems together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move to Margaret Kunst, down at the end there. Margaret?
Hi everybody, my name is Margaret Kunst. I'm serving my first term on council. I said this before, I'm running for my kids. I have 4 kids. They were born in this community and I really want them to be able to stay in this community, but as you can hear, it's pretty challenging when you understand the cost of housing and just opportunities for them to stay here. So I have a business background. My husband and I owned a sawdust and shavings business, so we got to know a lot of the farmers in the area. I'm also working right now currently for an immigration consultant company where we help businesses understand and navigate the temporary foreign worker program. A lot of businesses are really struggling right now finding workers. Just having a pulse is not really a good qualification. And I'm also currently was elected to the UBCM Executive Committee recently, so I'm looking forward to learning more about developing policy and understanding the needs of our business community here in the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. And our next introduction will be coming from Michael Pratt.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you to the Chamber for putting this event on. My name is Michael Pratt, and I'm a small business owner, an Army reservist, and a master's student in urban planning, and a lifelong resident of the township. And so I'm running in this election for the same reasons that I ran in 2018, and that's because I believe we need a council that has people on it who have a vision for what our community is going to be in the long term, and how we can actually build a community that doesn't just have homes, but it has the amenities, it has the retail, it has the parts that really make a community whole. And I think we need to get pettiness out of politics. I think it's too long that we have had councils and we have had politicians who aren't able to focus on ideas and the actual tangible things that are gonna make life better for people. We have people who focus on their personal differences. So that's why I'm running for council. That's why I believe it's important that we elect people who are able to work together and have a focus on what is best for you, the residents. And I'm looking forward to earning your support on October 15th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael Pratt. I'm going to move to Kathy MacDonald. That one should be loud there, yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Kathy MacDonald. I'm from the Willoughby catchment here in Langley. I have 2 teenagers here that started at Willoughby Elementary, have gone to Peter Ewart, and are now at RE Mountain. I've had a business in Langley here for 17 years. I'm a new member of the Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce. Over the years, we've grown and expanded our facility multiple times. We've recently navigated our business through COVID, so I understand the pressures and challenges that all the businesses in Langley have, and I want to be an advocate for all the small businesses here in Langley, in addition to all the important issues we're talking about tonight. I have a friend who's trying to open a Pilates studio. She's been paying a lease for 7 months now without any revenue coming in because she's waiting for permits and her construction to be approved. I met a business owner who owns several restaurants here in Langley and wants to expand his restaurants, but it's too expensive to do that in Langley because of the cost of waiting for permits. So I want to not only help with all the important issues today, but be an advocate for all the small businesses here in Langley. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Barb Martens.
Hi, good evening, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for having this event tonight. I am Barb Martens. I'm running with Contract with Langley. I have I'll start with, I live in North Langley and have since 1994, where I've raised my family. I have 29 years of public service, 9 years with the BC government in social services, and the last 20 as a serving police officer in Vancouver, primarily on the streets in downtown. As my colleague Tim mentioned, I've worked extensively with the homeless, with shelters, with first stage, second stage housing, and I've seen lots of models and worked to navigate what's working best for the communities that those properties are in and trying to make them work well for the people living in there. I believe that we need to support all residents of the community and all the businesses and the conflicting interests sometimes. So I've also worked closely with the business community in downtown and recognize the unique interests of that group as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we're moving to Karen Moraes. Karen.
Hello. I'm Karen Moraes. I've lived in Langley since 2006. I'm a mom of 7 children, I hold my degrees in laboratory medicine, medical microbiology, and social psychology. I currently work in social services. You may have seen me at many other rec centers when I did work for the township and bringing the Indigenous Circle of Health programs. I really want to get Langley to be more family oriented. This is a place that I want my family to grow up in. It's a place where I feel it's more like home, and we need to represent the diversity that is coming into Langley currently. And I feel, you know, if we could get a great team together, that we could do great things here. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'm moving on to Carrie Poitras. Karen?
Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay? Oh, there we go. My name's Carrie Poitras. I'm a Métis woman living in Langley. I grew up in South Langley on a small family farm. As I'm now raising 2 boys in the Willoughby area. Career-wise, I started in agriculture and I moved my way through and I helped supply chains convert over to more sustainable methods of getting their product to market. I've always been very passionate about sustainability, community, and innovations in those areas, and I hope that you'll consider me in October to bring those skill sets to your council. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie Poitras. And then to wrap up our introductions, Cam Respondek. Cam?
Hello. My name is Cam Respondek. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been in the insurance and finance industry for over 15 years. I also have a degree of criminology from Simon Fraser University with a specific focus on crime prevention through environmental design. I think with the interest rates skyrocketing, you're going to find investment dollars dry up. So what we need to do is get more creative. We need to look at our current books, our current budget, and find and cut the fat. And what we're going to find when we do that is a lot of wasted resources that we reallocate to areas of greater need. And I know for sure from just serving on past business boards and other boards in the city of Surrey that there's a lot of waste, and we can definitely do a lot better with what we currently have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are our candidates for this round. Let's talk about 208 Street. Last election, the transportation issues along the 208 Street corridor were mentioned by many candidates. It was on signs, it was featured predominantly in the campaign. 4 years later, we're still facing many of the same challenges, and if I were to pinpoint a specific issue that we have the most questions around, it was 208 Street. So what would you do on council to change this? What would you bring to the discussions, and how can we fix the bottlenecks on 208? So we're starting with Steve and then Sirkman.
I'm the first person to admit my name was on those signs that said, let's fix those 208s. So you can point to me right away. Today we need 5 votes to fix that 208 corridor, the 4 lanes, 80th Avenue, and some of the surrounding corridors around that. We need to get 208s fixed. And also transportation is a main emphasis on the Eric Woodward team. We want to get that done. We need 5 votes to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Sirkman, your turn with this question.
Yes, so my team and I have realized that this is a major problem in the community, and we see that it's the development that's there is being delayed, and it's also a reason why there's so much traffic congestion in that area. So we would like to push the development that needs to be done, get those roads built. We see this as one of our major priorities as a team, and this is one of the main things we're going to be working on when we are elected. And we see that throughout all along 208 that it needs to be widened, and if our team is ready to make these changes, because we hear that there's nothing being done to it, as people have mentioned that in the past couple of years it's been a while. We need 5 votes. We have a strong team, and we will get this done. That's our priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Sirkman. We're coming down to Margaret Coops on this question around 208 and bottlenecks.
What I realized after 1 year on council, it's really awesome to make promises and give you all sorts of hope for things. When you get on council, it's a little more complicated. I voted for Wartak, which was the Willoughby Arterial Road Amenity Policy, and I thought it was a really good idea because it actually meant that DCCs would go in, or development money would go into a special policy, and then that would pay for the roads for the future. What I realized is that there wasn't really a lot of money after a few years in that policy. So it was going to cost $60 to $80 million to actually do that road, and I just didn't feel like that was an appropriate way to spend the taxpayers' money, because that would meant we would have to borrow that money. So these are some of the challenges, and I love hearing the ideas, but the ideas need to come with having a common sense and a reasonable approach to them. So anyway, those are my 2 bits.
Thank you, Margaret. Now we're coming down to candidates Michael Pratt on this question.
Thank you, Corey, for the question. So the first thing that needs to change when we are building out our road network and our transportation network in the township is we let the developers do it. So right now, the reason why 208 Street looks the way it does is because each developer builds out the frontage on their part of the property that they own. So if 50 feet get built, that's what it gets built. So the first thing that needs to change is that. We need to identify the major roads, 208th, 76th Avenue, 204th, and actually get these built. And then we can charge latecomer fees from these developers or fees up front so that the developers pay the debt down and the taxpayer is paying less in the long run. And we also need to focus on actually getting the network done. Traffic on 208th Street is always going to be bad as long as 208th and 200th are the only 2 options on getting north-south. We need to finish 204th, we need to finish 202, we need to finish 76th. These are the priorities, and these are on the new, and as a part of the new council, these are the priorities I'll be pushing for, and we're going to get them done. Thank you.
3/4 of Langley's land base is farmland and restricted as part of the agricultural land reserve, on one hand. On the other hand, we have a couple hundred new residents moving to Langley every month and need to find a place to live and housing to be built. What is the balance between protecting farmland and finding land for housing and homes for people who want to live here?
Hi, thank you for the question. I don't believe any part of the ALR should be used for housing. That land is 100% protected. There's enough land in Langley for us to have more development, and the ALR is not part of that plan for development. So there's different communities we can build in, and different communities would have their own plan, whether single family, townhouse, multi-family housing. One of the ideas we have to have more affordable housing and not using the ALR is maybe building some condos with lock-off units. Maybe first-time homebuyers can afford a condo with maybe their in-laws living in the lock-off unit or using that as a rental. So we need to look at more creative ideas for housing and not go anywhere near the ALR.
Thank you, Kathy MacDonald. We're going to Barb Martens for the next answer on this one. Thanks, Barb.
You're welcome, Barb Martens. Yeah, so thank you for this. So yeah, let me start with saying contract with Langley, we're committed to not converting any of the ALR to development. And we want to protect that 75%. And we do have the space within the 25% to build communities. The important piece is doing it in a coordinated, thoughtful approach, not just piecemeal all over a community. We need to have an overarching plan for each neighborhood that does have a mixture of housing that serves the different needs of the people living in that community. And I think we can do that within our 25%. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb Martens. We're moving on to Karen Moraes, and then we'll be finishing this round off with Carrie, Poitras, and Cam Respondek. So Karen, over to you.
I have no intention in moving into the ALRs. We do have a lot of property that's available. I've talked with friends that are trying to develop property. What I'm hoping for Langley is that we are able to bring in more housing, buildings, a place that actually welcomes community. We know that a lot of the people are moving out of Vancouver due to the prices, and they're moving into the Fraser Valley. The problem with that is that we don't have space enough for all the movement that's coming out here. So you hear about people complaining they don't want them moving here. We don't have the schools, we don't have the fire department, we don't have the police force to take on that kind of numbers. What they don't realize is we need the movement to come out here first. Once that comes, then we can start building the schools, training the firefighters, and building up the police department. There is a process to having Langley grow. I'm not completely in favor of it, but I'm also not opposing it.
Thank you, Karen. Carrie Poitras, you have the question next.
I 100% don't support moving into ALR lands. Our farming and food resiliency is dependent upon us protecting that. We need to build in the urban areas. We have to do it smartly. We have to do it with sustainability in mind. That means building communities around the idea of trees that need to mature and replace canopy that we're losing while we build out, and not building around the car as much as we do currently. If we follow those types of sustainability ways of thinking when we're building and planning these communities, they will be livable, they will be walkable, we'll be able to have the density that we need while protecting our ALR and our food resiliency for future generations.
Thank you, Carrie Poitras. And last on this question is Cam Respondek. Over to you, Cam.
I'm definitely not in favor of moving anything out of the ALR. There's, I believe, only 40% of the ALR currently being used for farming purposes. We need to get that up. But there are already areas that are being developed in Langley, and they just need to be developed better. We need more density, and we need the services there so we don't have the transportation issues where people have to go exorbitant amounts of kilometers just to get to a service. So before we go and start expanding, we need to look at where we're already expanding and make sure everything is zoned for densification. North America is very wasteful. If you look at Europe, the density is much, much greater. Same with Asia. We need to kind of follow in those footsteps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to question number 2 for this group. For much of the previous term, the township's recreation centers were closed due to the pandemic. When other cities like Surrey and Burnaby reopened their pools, gyms, and lessons, the township lagged behind, forcing local families to leave Langley for recreational programs, and many people, as they've let us know, feel that they're paying taxes for services that were not provided. Since we had 2 of you were not on council, 2 of you were, those of you who were on council, what would you have advocated for anything different for how the township handled the pandemic? And those of you who were on council, what was your position on this and your take on how the township handled the pandemic and its services? So, Quinn, we're going to start with you, and then Margaret, Michael, and Steve.
Yes, thank you for the question. So yes, I do think it could have been handled better. I do feel that our township is understaffed with the staffing of these rec centers and community centers. We need to work on that. We need to get more staff in. We need to get people that are undercut. We need to get them in there in our facilities, and we need to reevaluate and see what we're doing wrong here, because we are obviously, if we are still closed when Abbotsford or Surrey is still open, there's something that's happening wrong here. So we need to get more involved in our community, see what's happening, get our staff in that are not being paid or undercut, and fix these issues for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Sickman. And we're going to go down to Margaret Kunst on the end here. Margaret?
Well, that's a really great question. That was a really hard decision for our council and for our staff. I know that our emergency management team, they worked really hard. Maybe we didn't do everything right, and maybe we could have done things better. But I know that safety was one of the first and foremost things that were top of mind. So it's really hard to sometimes compare other municipalities, because people say, oh, we went over here and it was open, and then we hear that actually it wasn't true. So, there's lots of stories floating around. We could have absolutely done a better job. Hindsight's 2020. But absolutely willing to, should something like that ever happen again, hopefully not, work towards ways that we can work with our staff to make, those decisions a little better for our community.
Thank you, Margaret. And Michael Pratt, we're going to come down to you on this question.
Thank you, Corey. To address the second part of the question, I think it's, for me, as a non-incumbent, it's a simple answer. And I think that as long as the safety measures were in place and as long as the right precautions were in place, there's simply no reason why Langley has to be the last one to come back. There's no reason why we have to be giving our residents less of a service than other communities are getting. Now, to address the staffing issue and the kind of culture we have in the township, where our junior staff, our middle staff, they feel that they're not being valued or they're not being given the resources they need to succeed. I have plenty of lifeguard friends, I've got plenty of friends who are in those ranks of our staff, and we need to make sure that we're giving them the resources they can in order to do the best jobs they can. We need to make sure our facilities are staffed, and we also need to make sure that we're doing it in such a way that our neighbors in Surrey who are paying less taxes but getting more services that doesn't continue, that we are actually getting the value for the taxes that you are all paying and we are all paying. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael Pratt, on that question. And last on this one is Steve Ferguson.
First of
all, I want to thank Michael because he had a good answer on transportation, a good answer on recreation. Thank you, Michael. And I think on those of us who are facility users, it was devastating for us. And if you weren't a facility user, it wouldn't matter to you. But I'm saying that what we need to do is we need to go forward past COVID and move forward for recreation, for soccer fields, for ice rinks, for baseball, for a number of other recreational services for people all ages, including seniors. So yes, we need to move to the next step of park and recreation.
There have been a lot of promises made so far, frankly, from all the candidates, to build roads, rec centers, fields, tackle housing. You've heard that so far tonight. How do we pay for all of this? How do you specifically plan on funding the promises that you have made in the campaign? Who's going to foot this bill? Barb.
Thank you. Yes, Barb Martens. With regards to the taxes and the budgets and how we're going to afford this. So let me start by saying Contract with Langley is not interested in raising your property taxes in order to pay for these promises that have been made in our campaign. It's important that we are getting ahead of things, or catching up with things actually, with our services like community centers and a new pool in Willoughby and those sorts of things. And if we don't do it now, it's going to cost that much more 15 years from now. It's going to become a bigger burden to the community. So that's really important. As far as affording it, it comes from other like CACs and DCCs for these various things that we've offered. So that's our commitment, and we feel it needs to happen sooner than later, or it never will. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. And moving to Karen Moraes.
I honestly don't think that we would need another recreation facility. I worked in the recreation facilities here, and since COVID has hit, the biggest problem that we have right now is staffing and getting the people back into the centers, because it brings a lot of income back into Langley where we won't have to deal with a lot of personal taxing. Yes, I was one of those that processed people's property taxes, so I'm familiar with that. We have lost a lot of instructors, lifeguards, cashiers, and rec attendants since COVID, because so many people needed their income, and most of us, including myself, I was an auxiliary. We worked full-time based on the hours that were available, and when the facility shut down, we weren't brought back. So we have a lot of need there, and people complaining that they can't get kids, their kids into swim lessons. And I think the biggest problem right now is we need to do a large job drive.
Thank you, Karen. So we're moving to Carrie Poitras, Cam Respondek, and Kathy MacDonald on this question around how do we pay for the promises that you're making in this campaign. Carrie.
Well, first off, we have to look and make sure that development is paying for development. I would suggest that we need to look at the DCCs annually with our budgets and making sure that they're keeping pace with inflationary costs. We've all seen how building costs and transportation and all of those pieces that affect how much it costs us to build things have increased. And if we're doing that on an annual basis, we should be able to keep pace with it and start catching up with some of the facilities that we're lacking with right now. It is important to have those for youth. It's important to have those options for our seniors and everybody else in between, but we have to do it in a fiscally responsible manner and not put the taxpayers in Langley in jeopardy or having to face increased costs with their property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going over to Cam Respondek with your answer to this question.
Thank you. So, kind of like I said in my introduction, when we review the current budgets, we're going to find that there's a lot of wasted resources there that we're going to be able to allocate to areas of greater need. In addition, we need to look at the contracts that are going out, any government municipal contracts that are going out, and seeing what we're actually getting for our dollar. And that needs to be across the board. Right now, there's kind of a lack of oversight of where our money is going. How much value are we getting for every single dollar that is being spent? And that needs to be reallocated. This is a systematic issue that needs to be addressed, and I don't think we need to go too far to find a lot of the money within the current budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam. And then finishing off this question, we're going to Kathy MacDonald.
Hi, I believe we're getting taxed enough from the federal government and the provincial government. We don't need our municipal taxes to go up as well. Because if we raise our taxes here, everything goes up for our residents and our businesses. So the first thing Elevate Langley is promising is to build our parks and projects on land the taxpayers already own. If we had to buy new land, park space is about $7 million an acre. So to build a new park or pool, that's 5 acres. That's $35 million, and you haven't even started your construction yet. So we're going to build on land already owned by the taxpayers. I'd also like to do a complete review with Metro Vancouver because I believe Langley's getting shortchanged on their allocation of funds. I believe Delta and Burnaby are getting way more funds than we are for transit. We pay the same taxes and the same gas taxes in other municipalities, and I'd like to review with Metro Vancouver at Langley's allocation of funds.
So the question is, honestly, there's only so much local governments can do on their own. They have to work with other levels of government, negotiate, and get things from higher levels of authority. What skills or experience do you bring that's going to help you actually advocate, negotiate, and work with other levels of government to support the township's priorities and get things delivered for our residents? So Margaret Kunst, over to you.
So I feel like good leaders, good governance kind of starts with respecting people. It's having a collaborative approach. It's building consensus. It's maybe it's your idea, but maybe you could like just share that idea and give everybody the glory for it. And you know, when you're going through a rough time, or you know, as the leader, you should actually take that responsibility and don't dump it on somebody else. So, you know, when we're talking about other levels of government, you know, this is huge because, you know, the Township of Langley really relies on our provincial and our federal governments. We need to have good relationships so that we can actually have the funding that we need for things like transit, for things like housing projects. These are really, really important. So we need leadership on, you know, at the council table that is collaborative and that, you know, we can all work together for the Township of Langley, not for our own personal agendas, but for the people that live in Langley. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. And we're going to be moving on to Michael Pratt.
Thank you, Corey. So when we are on council, we are forced to realize that the municipal government has the fewest amount of power, but we often have the most responsibility. And so we do need people on council who actually have experience and who have the ability to put pettiness aside, focus on what matters, and actually get things done. And to answer your question about experience in that regard, when I was a kid, when I was 13 years old, my sister and I, we co-founded an organization called Langley Youth for the Fallen. We worked with local businesses, large businesses, the federal, the provincial government. We raised over $100,000 and we built the only memorial of its kind in the country to the men and women who fell serving this country in Afghanistan. It's over by the airport. So I have the tangible experience on getting that kind of thing done. I was the chairman of the board for the largest undergraduate society in the country, overseeing a large budget where we had to make sure that we were being responsible and accountable to the people we represented. That's the kind of person I am, and that's the kind of councillor I would be.
Thank you, Michael. So we're coming to this question on working with other levels of government. We're going to go to Steve Ferguson and then Gill to finish us off. Steve.
That is a good question. You know, there's a lot of folks running tonight and they're really good people. And I want to remind them that it's 60-hour weeks sometimes. I'm retired. I just retired. I spend a lot of time in Metro Vancouver. We just improved the Northwest Langley sewage treatment plant for Langley so we can have, I guess, 100,000 more people with that new plant. We've got new water projects going within the region. I'm also on a treaty board where Canada's there, BC's there, the Treaty Nation, and myself. It's an interesting working together. I'm on speed dial with MLAs and MPs in the area so we can work together on projects, including the project we did in Aldergrove, where we got, I think, about $10 million from the feds. We have to work with partnerships. And I think it's important for those elected that we have to put the time in. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And wrap us up here, Suckman.
Thank you for the question. So with leadership, one of the reasons that I'm here in front of you guys today is because a great leader, Rich Coleman, he's the one, when he approached me, it was an honor when he said, asked me to be part of his team. And he is a very experienced leader that we've had. He's a 6-time consecutive MLA of Langley here, and he is the mentor in a way. He's mentoring me, which is another reason I've joined. And being a young youth of Langley, I feel like it's important to get the youth involved in Langley, and I've been given the opportunity, and it's a very big responsibility. So I feel like with the community support here and the great mentorship and the leadership, the skills that we have, and the connections that we have in government because of Rich, we have a good opportunity to listen to the community here and listen to Langley and do what is best for our community here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A lot of questions voicing concern over a rise in property crime and petty crime in recent years. We had a number of people mention repeat offenders. We know at the Chamber we have a number of businesses that know people who break windows or steal by name because they see them every day and they keep coming back. And we had a number of people from Walnut Grove and Willoughby mention that they're seeing homelessness in their communities for the first time. What would you advocate and advance at the council table to ensure we're addressing people's lack of safety while addressing things like addiction and homelessness as well? So this is going to Karen, Moraes first, and then Carrie and Cam.
Thank you. I think what we need to focus on, it's not so much the rise in crime as it is in helping those that are committing the crimes. And I'm not saying help them steal, but we have a lot of people of the homeless here that have PTSD, they have mental health issues, none of that is being addressed, the cause as to why they are on the streets. And I've addressed this before. I'm a dual citizen, and I know back in, I think it was in the 80s, Los Angeles had a high homeless rate. And what they had done was they opened up a parking lot and they would do a valet service for their grocery carts and their animals so that their animals can get looked at, so they can get social services and they can get health care and any other counseling they might need. I think if we address the homeless with the issues that put them on the street first, we would be able to eliminate or at least lower the crime rate.
Thank you very much. Moving this question over to Carrie Poitras. Carrie.
I think that one of the first things I would like to see would be having a safety committee that would meet with the stakeholders in fire and in police so that we could have a community conversation to keep council in touch with what was going on and what resources we needed where. The second half of that question, I think, is addressing why we're seeing more homeless pop up in communities we haven't before, and the crime rates going up. If we could, on the forefront of that, head it off with good youth programs, outreach programs for addiction, and trauma-based injuries to our young people, we'll start seeing that curve as well, and having mental health available for everybody. It's hard to access those things. And I think those are the two things that we need right now in the Township of Langley so that we can get ahead of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. We're going to go to Cam Respondek on this one, and then Kathy MacDonald and Barb Martens will wrap us up. Cam.
Thank you for the question. So the way that we design our public spaces is extremely important to prevent crime and make sure that it doesn't happen in our communities. There's a lot of good literature out there that I'll be happy to share with anybody who's interested in some of these tactics, which we can't discuss now. The other thing we need to do is compel developers to crime harden the buildings. I've moved into a development recently and I've spoken with many people, and these buildings just are not built to address essentially the crime that we have. As a growing municipality, we're going to see this problem just explode over and over again until it's addressed at a construction level. And of course, as my colleague mentioned here, having some type of programs to address the actual root issue is ultimately going to be the way to kind of keep everything down. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam. Kathy, we're going to come to you next on this question.
Hi, yeah, I believe we need to increase our police forces from a staffing perspective and increase their visibility in high crime areas. If it's Willoughby, what you're saying, the crime is being reported, Rebecca Darnell's office where she's having property crimes, Walnut Grove where there's crime, we need to increase our police presence. I know there was a program in Alberta where they put a police cruiser on every exit on the highway for about 20 miles, and it decreased accidents by 50%. So just seeing that police presence, it makes you slow your car down. So just like in our communities, a police presence should hopefully slow down the crime. I believe we also have to be way tougher on those that are taking advantage of the vulnerable by selling illegal drugs and have way harsher punishment for those that are doing that.
Thank you, Kathy. And Barb Martens, we're going to come to you and to wrap up this question. Barb.
Hi, thank you. So thank you for this question. This is very near and dear to my heart. It's what I've been doing for decades. So as far as policing goes and combating the increase in crime, we need to look at the police deployment. I have a healthy respect for my RCMP colleagues here in Langley, but they need some love. They are operating with over 20 vacancies. That's 20 officers, not in uniforms, not in your communities. The next issue is with the community police offices. They're all closed, and there's not even one in Brookswood. I used to volunteer at one, and I can tell you right now, when you've got a member assigned to a neighborhood that has an interest in that neighborhood, they're available to the people to help with those more petty crime issues. And also, it puts more members in those offices 24 hours a day for a quicker police response. As for homelessness, it's a hugely complex issue. We need a continuum of housing with wraparound supports for those people, and it requires all layers of government coming together to discuss that issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let's have a round of applause for this round of candidates. Very good. Thank you all very much for participating. Can we start with introductions so we know who is running for council this year from this group, and you can share a little bit about yourself. So I will maybe start on my left, your right here, with Kim Richter.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I am Kim Richter, and it's been an absolute honor to be able to serve you for the past several years as a councillor on Township of Langley. I'm running again because we are at a crossroads in the future of our community. We have 3 crises right now that we have to deal with if we're going to protect the livability, the safety, and the health of our community going forward. First, there is the cost of living crisis. Gas prices went up again today. Second, there is the climate change crisis. And finally, we have a governance crisis. So these are the issues that need immediate attention at the next council table, and these are the issues I will fight on your behalf for. I respectfully ask for your vote again. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And we'll probably just work our way down the table here. So, Misty Van Popta. Misty.
Thank you. I'm Misty Van Popta, and I'm running with the Contract with Langley team. I am a mother. I've raised my child. Both my kids here is born and raised in this municipality. I love Langley. I am a project management accredited professional, and I work in the construction industry. Langley is too big to operate small, and we need to start having specific skill sets around the table. In my experience, I deal with process and efficiencies every single day, multi-million-dollar budgets every single day. You know, I've heard some great things and some questionable things this evening about, you know, building on detention ponds, and it starts making me wonder what kind of promises that we're going to get if we don't have the right skill sets around the table. And urban planning, green building initiatives is what I do every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Carlos Suarez Rubio, you can go ahead there. Carlos.
Hello. Hello.
Oh.
Hello.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey, and thanks everyone. My name is Carlos Suarez Rubio. I was born in Colombia. I finished my studies here at Trinity Western University after going to Camazon College. I've been in Langley for about 5 years, and I'm running because I want to bring government accountability. I bring integrity, righteousness, and good judgment to the table. On top of that, I have a strong faith, and I believe I will be a great candidate. My 20 years of experience have been in the private sector. I have worked for mainly customer service, and my last 6 years have been in security, reason why I have a passion for policing. And thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And Teresa Townsley.
Hi, my name is Teresa Townsley. I am a former emergency room nurse that has been in the Township of Langley since 2010, and I am an entrepreneur. I'm currently the owner and operator of Festina Lente Estate Winery down in South Langley. As one of the businesses that survived COVID, I know that just like you, everybody is feeling the financial squeeze right now, and it's going to get worse. Don't let anybody tell you it isn't. Yet when we turn to our township, what we get is when we try to start a business or to pivot a business, we get this wall of bureaucratic barriers to business. And they're unreasonable, they're financially challenging, and I'm asking you to help me fix the problem from within. I want to enact a plan to remove barriers to business that's financially responsible, transparent, and won't bankrupt our future. Vote for a proven track record of service to our community. Vote for the voice of reason, responsibility, and transparency. And please, on October 15th, vote Townsley for Township.
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. Navin, over to you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Navin Thakur. I thank everybody for coming today. So my career as a commercial appraiser gives me a lot of experience with neighborhood plans, community plans, and the whole planning process. So we've seen it from the developer side, the municipality side, and from the homeowner side. We've seen what issues are involved. So in terms of affordable housing, that's something near and dear to me. So I believe that there's a lot of solutions we can come to for rental housing and market housing. It's not only just to increase the cost to the, like we could say that we're just going to increase the CAC fees, but those costs are always passed on anyways, so those are not real world solutions. But I also understand that different communities have different needs, and I know that we have to plan for the future, but we also have to preserve the Langley that we love.
Thank you very much. Gerald, go ahead.
Good evening, I'm Gerald Wartak. I'm running with Rich Coleman and the Elevate Langley team. I've lived in Langley since 2013 when I moved here with my wife and 2 children. Professionally, I've run a small business out of Langley for approximately the last 15 years. I've also volunteered in the community. I've been and continue to be a coach for Langley Minor Hockey as well as Langley Minor Lacrosse. I actually sit on the board for Langley Minor Lacrosse as a director as well. Though I'm passionate about those, felt it was time to do something a little bigger and something that could take advantage of my business acumen as well. And frankly, I just want to get things done. I want to focus on innovation and efficiency in our township, in our system, in our processes. We need to innovate the way we do construction as well as encourage sustainable construction solutions, to be frank. But yes, we need to get things done and do so in a fiscally responsible way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll finish off with Tony Ward.
Is this on?
There you go. Yeah.
Just want to thank everybody for showing up tonight and caring about municipal politics, so thank you very much. And you gentlemen, we all got the same email for the blue suit. But I'm Tony Ward. I've lived, worked, and breathed Langley air for half century. And I'm a Langley boy through and through, but what's my acumen? So I worked for the Township of Langley for about 28 years, a little bit more, in various capacities, anything from frontline labor work to equipment operating and to paving and installing culverts and replacing old infrastructure. And currently, and for the last 12 years, I've worked in asset management, which is, sounds funny, but it's the coordinated activity of an organization, that's the Township of Langley, to realize value from its assets. And what that means is basically it's the intersection between fiscal prudence and sustainability. So that's the lens that I'm looking through. So thank you very much.
Right now, the small business mill rate or tax rate in the township is about 3.5 times that of residents, despite the fact that studies will show every time businesses do not use 3.5 times the services. Do you think the current resident to business tax ratio is fair and encourages employment? Why or why not? So Teresa, over to you.
That's not such a simple question. The tax rate for small business is predicated on the fact that most times small business has been for people that aren't residents, that aren't using the facilities, that aren't using the amenities, but taking the economy from the township or from other people that live in the area. I don't think the tax rate, the mill rate needs to change. I think what we need to do is we need to steward the funds better. And so my thought is that we don't need to necessarily change that in any way, but to take the funds that we have and use it much better.
Thank you, Teresa. We're going to come down to Misty and Popta at the end there. Misty, you have this question around the tax ratio between business and residents. So go ahead.
Yeah, definitely a tough question. I used to own a small business in Fort Langley, a bike shop back in the day. And yeah, taxes is always a difficult one. We currently operate about a $330 million budget in the Township of Langley. And we got to find efficiencies to keep that down for everybody, including our businesses. If we can just find 1% efficiency, that's $3 million. I know by looking at the budget that we spent approximately $1 million on legal fees in regards to union items. So if we can start picking away at things like that, finding efficiencies in our budget, then we should be able to keep everybody's rates down. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Moving over to Tony and then Gerard. Tony Ward.
Okay. Is it on? Okay, there we go. Okay, thanks for the question. There's an old saying that before you take down a fence, you might want to find out why it was put up there in the first place. So even though I haven't looked at this issue, obviously we're all shooting from the hip here, and I wouldn't want to be presumptive and assume that from the hip I'm going to give an answer that's going to be complete. My first gut reaction, of course, is I would be in line with Teresa's comments here, that I don't think we'd want to change it right now. We'd want to find efficiencies within the system. And then I would be open to looking at it from there. But I do think that number one, I have it on my rack card, we've got to support small businesses and we want to see them have the ability to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And Gerard, you want to finish us up on this question?
Yeah, I'm going to agree this is not an easy question. Firstly, when it comes to business, we need to be encouraging business in our township, not creating obstacles against it. So I'm going to be clear on that one. That being said, I think we're all feeling the pinch. I live in this township as well, and every month you feel your monthly budget erode. So we can't move away from that. And so much like my colleagues have said, we have to look at the efficiency within our systems and look to as close to a zero net budget increase in terms of taxation. But I also think then that we also have to have, as I've mentioned before, fiscal responsibility in that regard, and that when we're introducing all these promises that we're putting here in front of you, that we have fiscally responsible solutions to ensure that doesn't result in the increase in taxation to our residents.
We have a number of incumbents not seeking re-election, so we're going to be having a lot of new voices and opinions around the council table. So for Kim, yourself, as someone seeking re-election, why is your voice and opinion the right one that Langley still needs around the table? And for Carlos and Navin, as seeking a first term, what experience perspectives would you bring to bear if elected? So Kim Richter, over to you.
Well, first of all, I want to make it very clear that new voices are good. It's always good to have new ideas and fresh ideas, and I'm certainly welcoming to see that change. But we also need to have a sense of organizational history or institutional history, and that's what I bring. And let me tell you, there have been so many times when history has repeated itself. And because I've been on previous councils and I've seen the way it was done or handled on previous councils, I'm able to say to the existing council that I'm on, hey, it worked well last time, let's do it again, or no, let's not go down this route. So that's what I would bring, institutional history. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. And Carlos.
Hello. Okay, thank you, everyone. I am running because I want to bring hope. I'm running because as I have volunteered for Tamara Jansen, for Troy De Sosa, most recent for Blair Whitmarsh during the 4 years ago, I don't know for him. I hear that people don't trust politics. I hear that people have lost faith. Their minds doesn't trust the game of politics anymore. I want to bring trust. I want to reassure people that politics is possible with integrity, that we get it done. As it is said, you will know them by their fruits, and I want to bring fruits, and I want to bring everything that is possible within a budget. But I cannot make big promises, and I'm not the kind of person until I see a budget in front of my eyes. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. And wrapping up this question, Tahar.
So one of the main reasons that I'm running for council is I've seen a lot of the inefficiencies on council. The council has been very fragmented. A lot of times it seems like things are just being delayed for the matter of just being delayed because nobody wants to actually get things done. Basically, like, I understand, like, with like having multiple terms on council, there may be experience, but the thing is that a lot of the campaign promises that were made in previous campaigns are being made again. So if somebody was going to do it, they had the chance and they didn't follow through. The other thing is that I'm campaigning on common sense solutions, simple solutions, and I have the practical knowledge to do so. I understand the planning process. I understand community plans and neighborhood plans, like I mentioned before, and I've had a lot of other experience with small businesses as well. So that's the thing. I don't want to over-promise hundreds of millions of dollars. I want simple solutions and physical responsibility, so we don't have to raise your taxes, but we can raise the bar.
Thank you very much for that. This summer has been another record breaker for heat and drought, and in the past year we've seen heat domes, record cold, atmospheric rivers. How urgent an issue is climate change for you personally, and what policies would you like to see advanced by the township to address climate change at a local level? Misty.
Thank you. Well, being in the building industry, you see a lot of the green initiatives that are coming down. The contract with Langley team is going to commit to moving to Step Code 4, and if you're not in the industry, you don't know what that means, but it means building high-efficiency homes. We're going to be doing a lot of development here, and we need to make sure that we're being sustainable that way. Obviously, we need to upgrade our facilities, making sure that our greenhouse gases are reduced by, doing our maintenance properly, upgrading our systems. There's a lot of initiatives and things that we can do within my industry to make sure that we're addressing climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. And this question is going to go next to Tony Ward at the end here.
Okay, thank you very much. So as stated before, I work for the Township of Langley in asset management and also stormwater. And so I used to work years ago. We'd rip out the old stormwater culvert and put in a new one. And as we do that, of course, we have an eye on, and of course I would support the same thing, on oversizing or right-sizing the culverts to meet a potential 200-year flood situation or that kind of thing. So we have done that. We'll, in some cases, increase sizes, maybe by a volume of up to double, and that sort of thing. So additionally, I do believe in a holistic approach when it comes to energy. The township is also, and again, something I would support, is also looking at lots of electric vehicles. We have a number of them in the fleet, and that's something that I'd want to continue on, as well as with service vehicles. So yes, I do support, I don't know how to end that.
Thank you very much. Moving to Joehl, go ahead.
Thank you. Obviously, I support us having a mitigation plan for storm and flood and whatnot. Absolutely. But I think the other side to this is when we're talking about climate change, we have to look at our involvement, what our solutions for in terms of our contribution to what's happening to our environment. We need to implement policy that encourages sustainable building solutions. We need to be encouraging such things as solar panels in our construction solutions. And we need to continue, as one of my other colleagues said earlier, we need to encourage the protection and continued protection of our canopy here in the Township of Langley.
Thank you, Joehl, for your answer on that question. And then rounding this out, Teresa Townsley.
I need you to repeat that question.
Yeah, for sure. How urgent an issue is climate change for you personally, and what policies would you advocate around the council chamber for township to address locally?
Okay, this is a big one. I am a farmer, I'm a business owner, and we are beekeepers as well. Bees are the canaries in the coal mine for climate change and for the environment. We see this every day on our farm, and as somebody who spent last November rallying support for the farmers in Abbotsford, that wasn't done by the provincial government and wasn't done by their local government, I know that when it comes to climate disasters and climate change, we need to move quickly. That's why In the Township of Langley, we cannot drain our financial cushion. We need to have something left over in the budget so that when climate emergencies happen, you can count on the Township of Langley for support and to act quickly in disaster planning. This is the emergency room nurse in me, but absolutely it must be done, and we cannot barter that for amenities right now if we don't have that financial cushion to adjust to climate change when we need it.
Our entire region is facing a critical shortage of industrial and commercial land for businesses to operate and to create jobs for our residents. What is your position and thoughts on developing and growing the Gloucester area and creating more industrial lands from the nearby rural and underutilized areas? So Carlos, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Okay. First of all, I need to make clear that the ALR land, farming land, will not be touched. That land should be honored only for farming, and I don't agree on any development over that area. But we need to look into different areas where industrial development can be built, and for that, I will, once elected, I can do a study and commit to development for more jobs, because we want to increase the income and the budget for Langley Township. We want to create jobs. We want to make sure that we have a building for in the industrial area to help farmers with the needs. There need to be like a meat processor, and there need to be like meat packers. One of my friends who sell eggs, he told me about it that I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate your answer on that. Moving this question over to Davin Tahar.
So with this question, there definitely needs to be more focus on industrial and mixed employment land. Mixed employment, that being also for offices and just any land that creates employment. So with respect to Gloucester, definitely is something that we can look into in terms of the specific land that's available. There should never be ALR land that's touched. It should always be outside the ALR. But if there's any other land that's suitable for this, that's definitely something we would look into. Also, I think any new neighborhood plan that's created, you should always look at some land for employment. Housing is important. Obviously, the focus is going to be on housing in any neighborhood plan because that's a primary land mass, but the thing is you also have to look at land and where for business purposes, and the thing is if you have that in all the communities, small pockets in every community, it'll also reduce traffic because people aren't traveling to get to those mixed employment lands. And yeah, so we'll evaluate.
Thank you very much for your answer on that question. And Kim Richter, you can wrap us up here.
Yeah, first and foremost, agricultural land should be for food production, period. What we're seeing right now in Langley Township, and it's happened over the last 10 years, but the last year alone, this has gotten out of control. People are moving to our community, they're buying ALR land, and they're not farming it, they're putting industrial or commercial operations on it. And you know why? Because that land is cheaper, and getting the fines for doing that on that land is just now a cost of business. This has to stop. It has to stop. We need to make better use of the industrial lands we already have before we even consider taking it into an expansion on ALR. And this is a problem Surrey's had. They had so much industrial land and they've wasted it, and now they're expanding, and their expansion is going to hurt our aquifer in Brookswood. This has to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Our last question for this round of candidates, and it's going to be going to Tony Ward, Gerald Wartak, Teresa Townsley, and Misty Van Popta in that order, and it's coming from our development and housing list. There are numerous examples of business and residential developments waiting many months or even a year for permits and approvals from the township. What measures, ideally specific policies, but broad actions as well, would you support to streamline approvals, speed up developments, to assist small business and housing to get built? So Tony, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been a consistent theme so far in this election. I don't think anybody's spoken against It's trying to speed up the approval process. So I think fundamentally number one is obviously we've got to have staffing, and we can look at an efficiency exercise within just to see if we can compare models in other communities. As was mentioned earlier, Langley City seems to have a faster system. We can always learn from others. That's the way we should be doing that. I know in my work we do the same sort of thing. You always want to borrow the best from others. So that's the number one as I look at staffing and other internal efficiencies. But outside of that, I can't point to any specific. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And Gerard, over to you.
A lot of our processes in the township are still paper-based. We're a little antiquated that way. I think if we introduce some electronic CRM systems within our functions and processes in the township, that will not only streamline the process, that will relieve a lot of the resources that we've been talking about here in terms of township staff. Very simple solution there. Secondarily, we have a lot of duplication in the way our processes work. Even a developer, even a homeowner coming in to do a secondary suite, they have to obviously have their professionals, PNGs, stamp their paperwork. It gets submitted to the township. Now the township has to get their professionals, their PNGs to look over it. That's duplication. Those are two gentlemen with the exact same caliber of education. We can remove that duplication and streamline our processes even more. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald, for that. Teresa.
So for streamlining the development process or accessing the township, we're in a position right now where unless you have a lawyer or a consultant, you can't access the development. I've gone through this process myself. I was told that I was too dumb to understand it. That didn't go over well. Specific things that we can do to stop that is to, if we are having trouble getting those permits done on time, why are we asking for so many permits? I've paid 3 times to have my driveway assessed. My driveway doesn't move. I don't know about yours. It's a ridiculous thing to ask. And so we've got to take a look at the permits we're asking for, ask for reasonable things, and then assign a caseworker to each person, each taxpayer that approaches the township, and it's their job to make sure that you are handled all the way through the process. So you have one contact, and it's their job to see you succeed.
Thank you, Teresa, for that. And then to wrap up this question is Misty Van Popta at the end there. Misty.
Hi, Misty Van Popta. When Eric Woodward and I sat down in the spring and started discussing the platform for the contract with Langley on our permit problem in Langley, it was based on real world experiences that I've had. I've had coworkers who have lost their jobs waiting for a permit in Langley. The things that we came up with is architect on record. So let's get specific here. If you've got an architect, why is a clerk at City Hall verifying another professional's work? So that's one of the ways that we can streamline, is that we can have the architect or the professional on record actually give the okay first, and then we capture an oversight at inspection time. The second item would be to increase staffing. Obviously we're short-staffed in all departments. The third would be to move out simple items like garages, decks, pools. Those items can be streamlined into another section where it requires less oversight, more oversight from staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Misty. Several residents in Murrayville wrote into us complaining about the road networks in their communities and the poor state of some of the roadways. This has been echoed by people in many other parts of the township as well. How much priority should be placed on building and maintaining the road network in Langley? Why do you think it hasn't happened, and how will you advance that on council? Carlos, you can kick us off.
Okay, thank you everyone. When it comes to road network, I think what we need to prioritize is our cyclist culture. We need to focus on empowering cyclists and getting that green vision ahead of us. We need to not only build roads for cars, because I think one of the questions that was asked is like, how are you gonna bring forward that culture toward a better environment? And so we need to have more cyclists. We need to invest in infrastructure for cyclists. And yes, we need to build a better infrastructure on 208, on 88, and there's a few, the lower road needs investment too. but we need to focus mainly on building a better future and a cleaner environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Nevin? And then Kim will come after.
So the road networks is basically something that in every Langley election people have campaigned on it, that we're gonna change it and nothing ever kind of changes. So firstly, like, I understand latecomer agreements. Whenever these new areas are developed, a lot of times they just leave it all on the developer and they say that the developer will build these roads eventually, but that eventually never comes. There's like 50 feet segments or 100 feet segments are built, and that's why every time you're driving you see like construction, and it's a never-ending cycle of construction. What I would recommend is these roads should be built up front, and if you have the proper latecomers agreements in place, you can recover that money back quite quickly. On top of that, when it comes to repairing and maintaining existing roads, obviously we got to have the proper staffing in place. But yeah, it's not, the current system's not working. The way that we fund the roads now is not working, and the city has to do this better, and this is through proper latecomer agreements. That's the right answer.
Thank you for that. And Kim Richter. Right now?
Yeah, I
There
think
you
it's
go.
working. Can I get a clarification on that question?
Yeah, for sure. So,
Are you asking about maintaining existing roads or building new roads?
so the question was, several residents in Murrayville have written to us complaining about the road networks in their communities, and that was echoed by people in many other parts of the township. So how much priority should be placed on building and maintaining the road network in Langley, and how will you advance that on council?
Okay, well, building the road network, I think we've had questions on that before, and I have to agree with a large part of the answers that were given, and that is that we need to make sure the infrastructure is in place before we start putting all the housing in, and we don't do that. That has to change. In terms of maintaining the road infrastructure, actually our roads are in pretty good condition compared to Abbotsford and Surrey, if you've driven along those roads lately. And one of the reasons for that is because we have a fund in place, a contingency fund, that is paid into every year at budget time to the tune of about $500,000 in order to ensure that we have the monies to maintain the roads that already exist. So that's my answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim. So we'll be moving into our mayoral candidate forum. So we're going to be a little bit different format, so I'll explain that as we go here. But may I ask the mayoral candidates we have here tonight? So Rich Coleman, Michelle Sparrow, Blair Whitmarsh, and Eric Woodward. Would you please join us on the dais here? So with fewer mayoral candidates, our format's going to be slightly different. We're going to ask each of the candidates to provide a brief introduction of themselves, and then we'll move into our discussion phase, where I'm going to ask a question of one candidate in random order, and they will then have a minute and a half to respond, and then I'll ask the remaining candidates to weigh in on that same question with their own 1.5 minutes. And after our questions, we're going to have some time for closing remarks and closing statements for each candidate. So maybe we can start with our self-introduction. So we'll have a minute and a half for you to share a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you're running for council, and maybe we'll just work our way left to right. Blair Whitmarsh. Thanks, Blair.
Well, good evening, and I know it's been a long evening already, but thank you so much for coming out and showing interest in municipal government and what's happening in the Township of Langley. My name is Blair Whitmarsh. I've been on council for 8 years and also been a professor in the community for 26 years. Lived here 31 years, have 3 daughters along with my wife here, and I also have 5 grandchildren that live in the local area. So I've been able to experience the community both as a grandparent and as a parent. And I'm running as an independent mayor. I'm running because I think council needs to be of independent thinkers, independent minds that can come together and to be able to make decisions that are best for our community. We have an incredibly diverse community. Even just looking around this room, you can see the diversity. And in order to have make decisions for a diverse community, you need to have a council that can work together and collaborate. And so I'm running to ensure that we have representation from all parts of our community and that all the voices can be heard and come together to make their situation known and for us to make the best decisions we can. We live in a wonderful community, and I want to preserve the lifestyle that we have and why so many people have come here. But I also want us to move forward in the future because I know that we have a tremendous opportunity going ahead. So thank you.
Thank you, Blair. Mr. Coleman?
Well, good evening, everybody. And first of all, I'd like to start off by thanking the Chamber of Commerce for doing this tonight. I've been a president of the Chamber of Commerce and been a director, and I know it's a lot of work and volunteer time, and I appreciate it. And I think it's important for the community that you do these forums every time we have an election, no matter what level. My name is Rich Coleman. I've lived in this community for well over 30 years. I've been married for 48 years. I have 7 grandchildren and 2 children. I just want to serve. I served this community for 24 and a half years in aspects like the Gardner Event Center and other projects here, and I just felt, after a couple of years off, I just felt I wanted to give some more back. So I wanted to come back and see if I could contribute to the community and help build the community for its future, particularly for my children and grandchildren and your children and your grandchildren, so that we can make sure this place is affordable, a place with innovation, a place with forethought that will actually turn this community into the great place we want it to continue to be and can even get better. It's a special place. There's a lot of really wonderful stories in and around this community of different people who've stepped up and done such remarkable work for the people here that we all care about. And I don't think we should ever lose track of that we're all good people, we all want to do what's right, we should do it together and build a community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Eric Woodward.
Yeah, great, thanks again. And I also was a director of the Chamber of Commerce, and I recognize the effort that goes into putting on this debate. So thank you again tonight for doing that, Corey. Thanks for everybody for coming out tonight to hear candidates for council and mayor, and I certainly appreciate it. You know, my 4 years on council, I've kind of discovered that it's been a big challenge to get big things done. We have a sort of an entrenched status quo that isn't keeping up with the community as it is changing and growing. That we don't have a plan for our growth that is building a livable community. We're not getting the facilities in place, the road infrastructure we need, the park space that we need for the density that we're adding in this community. I grew up here in Langley. I grew up in Langley City, went to Langley Senior Secondary, and I went to University of British Columbia. I have a degree in political science. Was a technology entrepreneur for a number of years. I have a bit of development experience and now run a charitable nonprofit in Fort Langley. And being on council again for 4 years, I think we need a new team with the experience to govern on day one. Policing, construction, fire, farming, small business, federal experience, and mentorship through Steve Ferguson and myself that really come together for 6 of 8 spots to really put together a real plan for our growth, solve our chronic infrastructure deficit, and a real sound financial plan to pay for it that other communities have, and we want to get that done too. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And our final candidate, Michelle Sparrow.
I'm on.
You're
Perfect.
good.
Hello, my name is Michelle Sparrow, and I am running for mayor of the Township of Langley. My decision to run for mayor is supported by the greater need I see in the community that I love. I understand that residents are struggling, whether it's access to accessible, affordable housing, cost of living, affordable childcare, or the mental health and addiction crisis. I believe township residents need a mayor who is not only in tune with individuals and families in our community, but is also prepared to take action and who understands that this cannot be done alone. I believe that the mayor must be able to relate, empathize, and advocate on behalf of our residents. A mayor can help amplify the collective voices of our community, and together we can create the change that's needed. My campaign is a grassroots campaign. Just as I did in 2011, 14, and 18, I will not be accepting donations from developers, including those who are employed by them. I believe community building should be free of the financial influence of powerful development companies. As an added commitment to full transparency, details of my campaign financing is available now on my website, and all contributions are disclosed daily. This level of transparency is a stark contrast to many typical campaigns where details are not revealed until months after the election. My full platform is available on my website. You'll see it centers around housing, development, protection of our agricultural lands, safe roads, and the immediate need to address our fire service staffing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So those are our 4 candidates for mayor tonight. So I'm going to start at the first question from our development and housing topic, and it's going to be going to Councillor Whitmarsh, who I'll start with, and then we'll go to Councillor Woodward, Mr. Coleman, and Ms. Sparrow after that. Langley is the fastest growing community in the region. SkyTrain is coming, developments are popping up everywhere you look. Looking back, how do you think Langley Township has handled this growth over the past several years, and specifically, where do you think the township could have got it better?
Well, that's a great question. Certainly the Township of Langley is growing very quickly, and as we know, SkyTrain is coming in 2028, which is going to put additional pressures onto our community. And we know that really most of the challenges that we face as a community is based on our significant growth. And those things that we see, traffic being one of the highlights one of the difficult areas that we see is traffic. And so I think that, we've worked really hard at the Township of Langley to make good decisions along the way, but I don't think we've been able to keep up with the pace of the development. We are a community that is building very quickly, and we're in that phase of our development where infrastructure is hard to keep up with, and development doesn't pay for itself. It doesn't pay in a community like ours. It might when we're developed an established community, but we're not that way. We have 6 distinct communities that are quite separated from each other, 316 square kilometers. In fact, I looked it up, we're only 1 kilometer short of the size of the city of Surrey, and yet they have 4 times the population that we do within the same area. So we have a lot of roads and a lot of space to manage, and I think we can do a better job. And I think we can manage the infrastructure needs in a better way as we move forward, and we need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitmarsh. So we'll bring in the rest of the table now for comments, and starting with Councillor Woodward.
So yeah, thanks for that question. I think I've been pretty clear that I don't think the Township of Langley is doing a very good job managing its growth, which is why we've been campaigning very clearly on getting a new plan for our growth and a team that can get a new plan in place. I think we have a pretty clear status quo problem in the Township of Langley that we're not keeping up with our growth, and the Township of Langley Council isn't setting the direction that the community wants. I hear it again and again, from soccer fields to ice sheets to community centers to parks, all kinds of issues all over the community, and opportunity after opportunity at the council table to do anything about it is lost. Voted down, or ideas get sent for staff reports that don't come back for a year. All kinds of budgetary challenges where we're not leveraging the budget and the cash flow that we have. We are not getting a fair deal from development that other communities take for granted, that have the same kind of growth that we have and are generating the revenue and sharing in the wealth for residents and taxpayers. And if we don't get a fair deal like that in place, we're going to be paying the bill down the road. And we're running to get a fair deal for residents and taxpayers, invest for the future, and get more for what's possible now for all of the housing that is being built here. We are not managing our growth. I think the last 10 years of the status quo politicians that we've had have had their chance. They've not done the job. Because we need a new team, the right team, that is going to get a new plan for our growth, a fair deal from development to pay for it, and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. Mr. Coleman.
Well, thank you. I don't think everything's bad here. I really don't. I remember the 1970s when the Township of Langley went ahead and put in all the services, sidewalk and curbs in Walnut Grove, and nobody came to build. And our community almost went broke because we were paying for infrastructure with nobody to use. I also think you have to build a community that's walkable and has places and space as you go. And you have to plan from the center out so you have your retail and stuff so people have a walkable community to go there. And that's what we've tried to accomplish in this community. So it's not all bad. There are some things you can always do better. I think particularly on the road infrastructure, it's not about building the entire road at the beginning, but maybe figure out on your early stages how you can do flows, have right turn lanes when you can flow traffic, and have a through lane like at the bottom of one street that would actually change how the direction of traffic goes, and then build the infrastructure in a relationship with the development of community through development cost charges, which we do collect, but do it in a way that we actually provide if we want people to pay later, then we need to have latecomer agreements that are actually bankable and sustainable so investors can make the decision to come and take the risk as we're taking a risk with them, otherwise we get no development. We want our community to be stable, we want to grow decently, and every time you look around you can always improve. So I don't think you have to be negative about everything. You can actually look at there are some pretty good things here too.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Read out the question again.
Yeah, for sure.
One more time for me. Thank you.
So the question is, Langley is the fastest growing community in the region. SkyTrain is coming. Developments are popping up everywhere. Looking back, how do you think Langley Township has handled this growth over the past several years? And specifically, where do you think the township could have got it better?
Great, thank you. So when I was on council back in 2016, I put forward a motion asking that staff come back and create a community amenity contribution policy. Growth is not paying for growth, and there is a need for us to address it and to collect the fees from development to pay for essential needs of our community, social infrastructure, pools, recreation centers, our needs within our fire services. I unfortunately wasn't on council this term when it came actually in front of council and was adopted as policy. The policy that is currently been approved by this council is watered down and doesn't address the actual funding needs that our community has. So I think at this point we are really needing to look at our community amenity contribution policies. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are many communities who are getting it right. The city of Surrey, for example, who does planning differently, and I think this is an essential part of the development of our community that we're needing to address, and I hope to be able to be at the table to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to stay in this development theme, and Mr. Coleman, I'm going to start with you this time, and then we'll invite Ms. Sparrow, Councillor Woodward, and Councillor Whitmarsh to weigh in. So staying on this development topic, I think everyone's mentioned tonight, and I think it's on all of your websites, about the time it takes for development to get approved in Langley. In light of numerous examples of businesses and residential developments waiting 12 plus months for approval, the BC government has already published roadmaps for addressing issues of housing affordability. They have a whole process, the development approvals process review. What measures, specifically or broadly, what changes, what actions would you support that would streamline approvals, fast-track developments, and help get more businesses, industries, and housing actually built? So, Mr. Coleman, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you. First of all, you need to modernize. Again, paper systems have been mentioned here a couple of times tonight. I've looked at different municipalities over the years where the ability to set timelines and have expectations for people that might want to invest or build something in your community has to be there. And they have to be met. So you have to somehow codify that in such a way that there are deadlines that have to be met, and the professional compliance can actually come in and actually speed some things up. But in addition to that, you need innovation. You need to take your housing and start to understand that you can do a mix in a building. Let's take a 400 unit building. 400 unit building would take over 80 acres of land if it was all on single family homes. The affordability comes when you innovate in the 400 units. So let's say you build a condo with 2 bedrooms and you add in a walk-off suite. That could be rented, it could be used for a senior family member, the expansion of the family in the future. But what it does do, if it does bring in a rental, it actually somebody that can't necessarily qualify a mortgage buy their first home. We have to find ways to innovate to allow people to get in and be successful. You do it by speeding up the process, but working with the industry and with yourselves to come up with affordable housing strategies for this community, for the people who want to live here in the long term.
Thank you. Ms. Sparrow.
Thank you. Am I? Yes, yep. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm excited about these questions. I'm excited that all 32 of us seem to be saying the same thing, because that is hopefully going to mean that we're going to actually see some change in something that is really desperately needed in our community and in many communities across Canada, really. So I think we really need to, not to echo everything that I've heard already today, but we need to look at, first of all, our staffing and supporting the staff that we have, increasing the staff that we have, modernizing our systems, going online, and triaging development applications as well, looking at the minor ones that can be delegated to staff. The province has given us, as municipalities, powers that we didn't previously have to delegate to staff, and allows us as well to change some of the public hearing requirements as well. And I think as communities, we need to be looking at utilizing the powers that they have given us to speed up the process, because it's clearly an issue that we are all in agreement on. And I think that we as communities can step forward and make the changes that are needed to see this process speed up and our community growth in our community move much smoother. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sparrow. Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, could you repeat the question again, please?
Yes, so we're looking at the development topic. Everyone has, as Ms. Sparrow mentioned, a lot of people have been mentioning that we want to speed up the development process. What does that mean? What specific actions or reviews or changes do you want to see that would actually move the dial?
Thanks for that. So I thought I also did hear the word specific in there. So I think that being on council here for 4 years, you know, innovation is a nice sounding word, but it's not a platform and it's not a plan. Any politician can say we're going to innovate and we'll figure it out once we're elected. What we're going to do is we need to stop requiring building permit level drawings to get a political approval, and that'll wipe out a year of processing time right there. Right now, for a council report, it's about 80 pages, 60 pages. Councillors are not looking at 80 pages on a townhouse development that they see again and again and again. There's no need to create a building permit level quality application to get a political approval. We're going to overhaul and reform the entire premise of the system if our team gets elected to do that. Then we're also going to improve building permit timelines by completely overhauling the premise of the system that is now based on engineering when it wasn't based on engineering 10, 20 years ago. And we can get those things down where I believe we can get someone to a building permit for new housing within 12 months. And we're going to refocus resources and stop spending time, you know, reviewing decks and pools that an engineer or an architect can do. And these are the kinds of tangible solutions that we want to put in place that we've outlined very clearly in our platform. We don't fall back on innovation and we'll figure it out once we get elected. We have a plan. We have 10 members that can get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. And Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yes, thank you for the question. The process of development is a complicated process, and it's become too complicated over the last number of years. There are so many steps that have to be met along the way, and different kinds of people have to check it, different professionals within the organization have to make checks along the way, and that makes it a very difficult, cumbersome process. And then on top of that, then things come to council, and then the council debates whether or not they would like a certain building put up, whether it's the right color or the right roof line. Those are the kinds of things that council should not be dealing with. Council, if an application comes forward that meets the zoning bylaw or meets the official community plan, those things should be dealt with staff and dealt quickly. We need an online process that we can do it faster than having a paper process at the counter. We need to have people that are checkers that check to see whether the applications are complete. We have many cases of applications that come forward that are not complete. Even the consultants that are working are not giving us complete applications. That also delays the process, as we have to use professionals to let people know that their application is not complete. So we need to move forward in that. And I would say the final thing is that we already are a very expensive community to build in. We are the 5th most expensive community in the Lower Mainland in terms of fees and all the different fees that add up to build. We have to reduce the number of fees, simplify the process, have just 1 or 2 fees that cover all of it and make it much more simple. That's what we need to do.
Thank you, Councillor Whitmarsh. So our next question is going to be coming from the taxes and budgets category. Tonight there's been a lot of promises made in this campaign for significant infrastructure investments from all sides. New pools, community centers, ice sheets, expanding the Aldergrove Community Center. I think there are a few that are on your team's website. We've had a number of questions coming in asking that in this hot time of high cost of living, how are we going to pay for all of this? And are property taxes either on business or on residents going to have to be raised as a result?
Yeah, so I'm glad we had this question. It's interesting that I get to answer it first. No, we will not be raising property taxes to get our infrastructure plan done. We have a chronic infrastructure deficit in this community. Everything from soccer fields to ice sheets to parks, and especially roads. And we're not getting it done to have a livable community for the density that we're adding. And it's not dependent on property taxes. We have $100 million plus cash on hand that we're not putting to work. We have a CAC program that is going to bring in $200 to $300 million just as it is over the next 20 years. And we are 1/3 of what Surrey is charging. We are leaving a ton of money on the table that taxpayers are going to have to foot the bill down the road. We're running to change it. We're running to get a fair deal from development for residents and taxpayers. That's respect for residents and taxpayers. Collecting the wealth that we need to build us a livable community. We're running to change it. Others are running to prevent changing it. And this is what we need to get done for our community. We have a plan to pay for it, which is a fair deal from development. And taxpayers and residents have a very clear choice in this election. People that are trying to prevent that, and people that are trying to make Langley better for the people and the taxpayers that live here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. Mr. Coleman, all the campaigns have a list of things they want to invest in. How are we going to pay for all of this, and what's going to happen with property taxes?
Well, first of all, let's talk about some of the commitments. Commitments in policing. We have a full complement of police officers. You have to make sure the budget is met by actually having the personnel here. The reality is we need to move to intelligence-based policing. We have that because we're the only jurisdiction in North America that has all police officers in one jurisdiction on the same information management system in real time. We know our statistics, we know where our problems are, we know where our stats are. Our police officers can sit down every week and identify the hotspots in this community and get to a higher level of visible policing without having to increase the budget policing just how you would police the community. Police are waiting for that type of innovation. There is a budget for fire. There are some things that need to be improved, like some of our fire halls need some work. We need to do that. That's a capital planning process. It can be done within a budget. And quite frankly, I look at the other stuff in recreation. I'll just give you one example. There's been a long-standing relationship with the school district in this community. The township can work with them to do things on their land. So take, for example, if you just put a all-weather running track at every single high school and inside put an artificial field, the beauty of that is you can get it done. You can do it in a budget that's acceptable because you don't have to buy the land. The land is available now. We'd be able to move on that and have these people in our community have those facilities close to homes. They don't have to drive across the entire community to find those facilities. They can find them in Aldergrove and Poppy and other areas of town.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Councillor Whitmarsh.
I don't know about you, but for me, I feel like I'm over-governmented. I feel like government is taking too big of a role in my life. I feel like there are too many fees, too many things that are added into my life that make it difficult. There are taxes added, there are other fees, there's user fees now for everything when you get to them. And our council, and I've been part of it, but our council has introduced other kinds of fees. And every time we do that, we have new bylaws that we bring in, and that causes an increased cost. We have to look and go back to streamlining what we have. We have to streamline our process so that we can afford the costs. We can't just keep making all kinds of reckless promises and then imagining ways that we can find the money. Every time we add costs to housing, whether that's increased CACs or DCCs or other kind of fees, every time we do that, that gets passed on to the consumer. Builders and developers and those who provide homes are not going to build homes at a loss. They are going to build homes for our community, and they are going to pass the costs along to the consumer, and the consumer is going to pay for it. We talk about affordable housing, and yet we've got promises of hundreds of millions of dollars of expenditures with no real understanding of how we're going to pay for it. You can say all you want, but in the end, if you don't commit to a balanced budget and you don't commit to fiscal responsibility, you'll end up with nothing. Thank you.
Ms. Sparrow, your comments on this, you talked about in the last answer increasing staffing. How do you pay for the campaign promises you've made?
Right, thank you so much. We are facing, all of you I'm sure know, the biggest rise in inflation since 1983. We have had the largest one-time interest rate hike in 20 years. We need to be, as a community, mindful about how we spend our money and how we budget. Just like we would in our own personal finances, just as we would as we look at uncertain times as communities, we need to be mindful of that. So it is concerning to me, the promises that are being made with no real understanding on how we're going to pay for them. Maybe it's the single mother in me, but we have a plan. Just trust me, feels a little scary to me as we move forward into this election. So, I think as we do look at the promises and the costs of all of these things, I hope we're all looking at it from our personal standpoint as well, where, we're looking at uncertain financial times. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Category, actually we're going to start Ms. Sparrow with you again, and then we'll move to Mr. Coleman, Councillor Whitmarsh, and Councillor Woodward. We've seen slates in this election, which is something that's not typically seen in Langley. If you're elected mayor, the rest of the council is going to be made up of opposing candidates and members of their slate. How are you going to manage to work together and get things done for the township voters in the next term? What attributes or experience do you have that will allow you to lead at the council table?
I feel like quite a few questions in that question. So first of all, I will address the slates. It's something that is concerning to me, and I'm given this opportunity now to discuss it. So yes, in this election we do have two political parties who are running, with two mayoral candidates who have hand-selected those who they wish to work with. Municipal government in many ways is the government that's closest to the people. And our community moving to the kind of party politics that we see both provincially and federally is something that I believe is a shift away from what makes local politics and local government so special. So these candidates have indicated that they can only work successfully to achieve their goals if they have those who they've selected sitting beside them. Voters, like yourself, have for many years chosen independent candidates to sit at the table, and it has been your voice that's decided who has a seat at the table. The power that can be given to one candidate in this election should be concerning, and I hope in this election on October 15th, the voters make a clear choice to protect our independence, and and that we are shown that the true power should be in the hands of the voters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sparrow. Mr. Coleman, if you're elected mayor and the council is split, how will you manage to work together and get things done for the township voters?
Well, first of all, I have a record of being able to get things done. You're sitting in one of them right now, the Langley Event Center. This building here was a collaboration from a provincial grant. It was the initial grant to get us started, then a collaboration with Trinity Western University, School District number 35 to invest in the gymnasiums that are in this building so they didn't have to build a gymnasium over at the RA Mountain, old RA Mountain. In addition to that, the Italian Cultural Center groups came in and they did the kitchen. The gymnastics group, we helped raise them the money so they could put their gymnastics facility, and it became a very good multi-purpose building. It didn't cost the taxpayers of Langley a whole lot of tax dollars because we put the partnerships together. I've been putting the partnerships together for years. All I have to do is look at the school out the back, $62 million brand new high school here. That was collaboration with our school board, with our township council, with myself, with government, at all levels to try and put together a formula that we could actually convince a financial treasury board at the provincial level that the priority, but also how to get it done. And it got done because I'm very good, if there's one thing I can say, is putting people in a room, helping them work together, find solutions, and get things done that are good for this community. I've been doing it for 24 and a half years. I'd like to continue to do that.
Councillor Whitmarsh, what attributes and experience do you have which will allow you to lead at a council table if you're elected mayor and the council is split amongst a number of different candidates?
Yeah, I am running as an independent mayor, and I believe that the council should be independent. Each member of council should be able to look at every single decision that comes on the table and decide what's best for the community at that given time and in that given moment. Not feel that they've committed already, pre-committed to somebody else or to another position, as what would happen with an electoral organization or a political party that we have in the local government. The sense that the idea that I can only do my best work if 4 or 5 of the people that are on my team get elected, to me is not the best form of government. It's not the way that we should be leading. Every one of you should know that when you have your government elected, that you have the opportunity to phone anybody you can on council, anybody that you want on council, to express your views. And your views will have the same kind of value as anybody else's views. That your values aren't going to be in the shadow of the 5 or 6 that happen to be elected on a team. We want the best team is the team that we bring together. I've had plenty of experience in the university experience as a dean for many years, working with teams and many different staff members and across the country, putting teams and organizations together. Even involved here at the Langley Event Center and doing things. So we've had lots of opportunity. I think your views and the diverse views that we have in our community need to be expressed, and I'm the kind of leader that will make sure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitmarsh. Councillor Woodward, if you're elected mayor, how will you work together with the council, regardless of how it's made up, to get things done for the township?
Yeah, well, I think that's a challenging question to answer. How will you get things done regardless of how the council makeup turns out? I think it's impossible to promise or commit to getting big projects done if a collection of independents get elected that don't say much during a campaign. So what we're trying to take a different approach where we have a very clear, extensive platform and it's a very significant platform because we have a significant challenge in our community around a chronic infrastructure deficit that has to be addressed. And a collection of team members from police, fire, and everything else have come together to commit to getting these things done. This does not translate to ignoring people, or you can't work with other people, or somehow someone's not going to be able to get things done at the council table. What we're seeing is that big opportunity after big opportunity slipping away. Day after day, council meeting after council meeting, where you have no idea how to run a community when you have a collection of people that have 9 competing different agendas on any one issue, sometimes 10, because they change their mind in the middle of a council meeting. Imagine the BC legislature with 89 independent MLAs. Nothing would get done. And we have a challenge here where nothing is getting done in the Township of Langley compared to what we could have. Finished roads, park facilities, and a real plan to pay for it, which does not increase the cost of housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. We're rounding the corner here. We have our last 2 questions. So the next one's going to be coming from our Parks, Recreation, and Environment category. And it's going to start with Councillor Woodward and then move on to Councillor Whitmarsh, Ms. Sparrow, and Mr. Coleman. Councillor Woodward, we've had several questions from parents and young families about the state of our recreational facilities in Langley. I mentioned earlier, kids that can only access the soccer pitch at 9 p.m. due to overcrowding, or families in the fast-growing Yorkson community questioning where the parks and playgrounds are. What is your assessment of our current recreational facilities, and what's your plan for improving parks and rec opportunities for Langley families?
Thank you for that question. We've obviously got a very extensive catch-up planned where we're endorsed by Langley United Soccer Association because we actually went and talked to them and asked them what they needed. We went and talked to Langley Minor Hockey and asked them what they needed. And we have kids that are getting up at 5 in the morning, 5-year-olds to practice. We have teenagers that are leaving the sport because they're practicing at 10 p.m. on a school night. And you're not going to spread these facilities throughout the community. When we hear these kinds of comments about using school district land, it's clear they haven't spoken to Langley United Soccer Association. It's very clear they're not speaking to our user groups and how they are serving our youth and how we can help them serve our youth. And how are we going to get these facilities built when we are projecting a population of 125,000 people just in Willoughby alone, and there's no plan for a recreation center, there's no plan for a senior center, there's no plan for an aquatic center, there's no plan for soccer fields to service this population, there's no plan for a park that isn't a playing field. This is what we're trying to change. A real plan for our growth that respects taxpayers and residents and gives us, all of us, a livable community that is invested and planned for the future. And that is not happening, and that's what we're running to change, and others are running to prevent us from changing it and maintaining a status quo which isn't working. It doesn't mean everything's bad. It means that things could be a lot better, and we're running to change it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. Councillor Whitmarsh, over to you.
Yeah, I haven't heard one person here or one at the council table, the councillors, that has suggested they're trying to stop parks and recreation facilities from actually happening. I haven't heard that from anybody. And I think all of us would like to see more parks, more recreation facilities, and more fine arts facilities, which we need desperately in our community. And we've talked a lot about a great fine arts community here, and we haven't developed a facility yet. At this time, we have had lots of discussions at the council table about doing that. It's a very expensive facility, so working with other levels of government to make sure that happens is critical, as well as it is for things like swimming pools, other kinds of large recreation centers, ice arenas. We often need, because the municipal government can't afford to do all of it on their own, they need to have strong regional help and assistance. It's why we need a mayor and a council that can work extremely well with all levels of government and with our neighboring municipalities to help these facilities get into place. Regional facilities are something that's really important for us to start building on. For us to think about having our own isolated communities that only people in the Township of Langley can use is not the step we should do. We should look for regional ways to build these facilities, and we can do that if we have the right kind of leadership at the table.
This question is going up next to Ms. Sparrow.
Sorry, I lost track there. Okay, yes. I agree with Councillor Whitmarsh. You're hearing a lot of the same comments here. We all are in agreement that this is something that needs to be addressed in our community. And it's about looking at ways to do that. As was mentioned earlier as well, when we look at our pools and our shortages where we're having families who are looking to book swimming lessons for their kids and not being able to do that. We are facing staffing issues. This lifeguard staffing issues are actually across Canada where we're seeing this. Other communities are looking at ways to make incentives for our young youth to be actually getting into that type of career, looking at allowing them to actually do the training and have that actually be paid for by the community. Things like looking at that staffing part, I think, is really important as we move into addressing these needs in our community. The other long-term part of it as well, which is what started my desire to put that motion forward in regards to our community amenity contributions, is looking at how we fund these needed community social infrastructures. And that is our parks, that is pools and recreation centers. And that is something that we need to look at as long-term of how we're actually funding these things so that we're able to provide them to the community and not increase taxes to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sparrow. And we'll wrap up this question with Mr. Coleman.
Well, thank you. Let me mention a couple other things. Pickleball, dancing, music, all other kinds of sports activity, tennis in our community are things other people enjoy. We have to plan for that too. Our aging society really likes pickleball. What they tell me when I dived into them is, could you get us some more pickleball? We don't actually have a softball field for girls in this community, softball, and yet we have some of the highest performing softball teams in Canada come from this community. It has to be a global thing for all of us to work together on parks and recreation. And parks and recreation includes trails, places where people can actually enjoy an e-bike or an e-scooter, which I'd never tried because physically that would probably ruin me the first time I fell off. But we have to remember, we want to build a diverse, collaborative relationship on parks and recreation, and we don't need to separate out one against the other. I've talked to people in Aldergrove who'd like to play soccer in Aldergrove. They'd like an all-weather field. We could do that at the high school with a track. People in our community want us to listen to all the people in this community. And that's what we intend to do, and that's what I intend to do. And just one comment on the earlier thing about slates. When I actually attracted people, the first thing I told them was this. In this organization, you always have a free vote. To vote and support whatever you believe in. Thank you.
I've said this is the topic we've got the most questions about, so I've saved it until last. We've touched on it a number of times tonight, so maybe we can dive into maybe some more specifics or some more detail, and that's transportation. Many residents are excited about the growth Langley has seen, but are frustrated by the impacts that it has caused on their transportation and getting around the township. Bottlenecks on 208, gridlock on 200, crumbling roads in Murrayville. What is your prescription for addressing the problems with Langley's road network? Try to be as specific as you can. We've heard latecomer agreements, pre-building. Maybe people don't know what those mean. So in our last question here, maybe try to dive into as much detail as you can on how do we address our transportation problems. So we're starting with Councillor Whitmarsh.
Thank you. I know this is one of the big topics here in the Township of Langley. The road infrastructure is, as I mentioned before, really important. One of the specifics that I think we need to make sure we do and do a better job of is that when we build roads, that we make sure that we build proper full intersections at each of the major places along the way, the intersections. For example, 208. 208 comes up all the time, 208 and Willoughby. If you go down 208, there's 4 or 5 intersections that are kind of along the way between 72nd and we get up to about 86 or so, 84th. Those intersections, if you look at most of them, some of them have full right-hand turning lanes, left-hand turning lanes, proper crosswalks, but many of them don't. 72nd Avenue and 208 is a great example of that. So it has a single lane road that comes down, and then it comes into a place where there's a very short left-hand turn lane, and then there's no right-hand turn lane. So traffic backs up for a long period of time. This is a way that we can do things quickly and we can make changes immediately, is by making a change in the intersections, fixing the intersections. You'll notice that at that same corner, there used to be a little corner store there. That corner store and that land has been bought so that we can do exactly that. We can make a proper intersection. These are the kind of things that we can do immediately to make a significant difference. The single lane roads are there until we double them and make it twin road, but certainly intersections is a key one.
Thank you, Councillor Whitmarsh. On to Ms. Sparrow.
Thank you. Hi. So I was born and raised here. I have seen a lot of changes, I'm sure as many of you have as well in our community over the years. We have 900 kilometers of roads in our community and 12,000 traffic signals. We're a large community. Geographically, we're big. And our transportation network is something that has been growing and changing over the years as our community grows. And I think we need to look at lessons learned from Willoughby, the community that has been growing the most in recent years, as we look to move into other communities like Brookswood and Fernridge. One of the things I would have liked to have seen us do a better job of is to phasing our development, to incentivizing those developers to work along the areas we want them to be, and putting financial repercussions on those who are looking to work out of that phasing area. I think that those types of things would allow us to actually have some order to our growth, and I think that's important as well. But one of the things when we talk about our transportation that we're not talking about is our roads and our safety. And I think this is a conversation that we need to have. The World Health Organization has labeled road traffic collisions as a major global health hazard and one of the leading and fastest growing causes of disability and death. I think we need to have those kind of conversations around our roads and not just on how to fix them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sparrow. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thanks. So, this is Exhibit A of why we've decided to run as our contract with Langley residents and taxpayers, because the roads aren't getting done. So when you allow development on 1,400 acres throughout Willoughby, previous councils made that decision with no plan for infrastructure. And then running as an independent in 2018, 5 of us that got on council promised taxpayers that we would solve it. And then only 4 of us voted to do it. And this is why we need to try something different than what we've been doing the last 10 years, with a very clear team that has identified up front what it wants to do, how it's going to do it, and then when it gets elected, might actually do it. And this is the problem we're having in this community, is that again and again, election after election, promise after promise, nothing is changing to help residents and taxpayers have a livable community, which begins with safe intersections. When you hear from a captain in the fire service that he pulls up to 72nd and 208th on a call for service and turns off the engine. When you hear that people that live in Milner Heights can't walk to school safely to get to up 208th Street. Kids do not have safe routes to get to school. They do not have safe intersections to cross major roads. And this team will get elected, hopefully, and will fix it once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. Wrapping this up, Mr. Coleman.
Well, thank you. Look at the track record. 200 was made into 4 lanes when I was in the opposition as the MLA working with the government. There's an underpass at 202 underneath the freeway. There's a new 216th Street overpass. There's an overpass over the bypass in Langley. All of those things were things that I put people together, all levels of government, to accomplish. You have to go forward with a plan that's workable, that you will take care of the rural roads as well as the roads in these communities. We can fix Willoughby. We can fix it like things what Blair was talking about, how you do your turn lanes as you actually transition to the full road. You do things in the interim to get it done, and you improve as you go. It just takes leadership and putting people together to get it done. Drive this community sometime. I've driven every road in this community over the last 24 years. It's a big community. 25% of it is developable land, 75% is in the agricultural land reserve. We have to recognize that we need a long-term sustainable road maintenance plan, which would be the first step. The second thing is, what are the little pieces of things that we can fix by talking to people to improve their access in their areas of the community? And the next thing is to make sure we actually start adding improvements to move traffic, to make it safe for people. And while we do that, continue to make sure we got the long-term plan that we can afford to do. Thank you.
All right, we've come to the end of our questions, so we're going to put 1 minute on the clock for closing remarks because we're a little bit over time here. So we're going to allow you all to have a little bit of closing remarks here to finish us off and wrap up our candidates forum. We're going to start with Ms. Sparrow. With closing remarks, we'll do Mr. Coleman, Councillor Whitmarsh, and Councillor Woodward. So, Ms. Sparrow.
Thank you. I won't take the minute because I'm respectful to all of you for your time and effort, for being here, sharing your evening, being as engaged as you are. I appreciate it. There are 28 council candidates and 4 of us running for mayor. I think that's a pretty good indicator of our community and how engaged we all are and how passionate we all are about making a difference. And I'm really proud of everyone. I sat in the audience and I watched all of the candidates, and I'm proud to live here. I'm proud to be from here. I'm proud to raise my daughters here. And I'm just really appreciative of all of you taking the time to learn about us, and thank you.
Mr. Coleman.
Well, like Michelle, I'd like to thank you all for hanging in for the last hour, a couple hours or more. It really is a testament to this community, which is the volunteer capital of Canada. People in this community give back. They care about this community. We want to give back. When I decided to come back and run for mayor, I decided to do it because I wanted to bring young people, invigorate young people, and mentor people to get into public life, which I think has been lacking, and we need the next generation. Even some of the other candidates in my team have all people that I know who I have a high regard for, and I'm glad they're taking the time to step up on behalf of our community. I believe it's important that people take the opportunity to serve. I think I can lead this community, keep it together, build a strong future, and I'd like to give you that opportunity to do so with my team on October the 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Councillor Whitmarsh.
As I've mentioned, Langley is an incredibly diverse community, many different perspectives and views, and that has changed significantly even in the last 10 years here in the Township of Langley. And so I'm going to encourage you to, as you go to vote, that you not only think about this particular election, but you think about the next 4 years and ensuring that you have the kind of leaders that you want, the leaders that you know that can listen to you, that will hear you, and I'm encouraging you to vote for independent mayor and independent council members so that you can have a voice for 4 years, not just on October 15th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitmarsh. And Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank everybody again for coming out tonight. Langley is a great community, but it could be a lot greater. And that's why we're running with a team, the right team, with fire, police, farming, small business, years of public service experience, and that we need a new generation of leadership that is going to commit to what it's going to do and how it's going to do it, and get us a fair deal from development and a livable community with infrastructure. The iterative approach is going to be 10 and 20 more years of just the same. We need a plan. We need a team that's going to execute the plan and has a way to pay for it. That isn't property taxes, that is investing now for the future. Let's build things again. Let's plan for the future with our community, what we want it to be 10 or 15 years from now, and elect the team that's going to do it. We have a very clear choice in this election. We can keep doing what we've been doing, and we can see the result. We can try something new with the right team to get it done with a plan for our growth. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Woodward. And Councillor Woodward, Councillor Whitmarsh, Mr. Coleman, Ms. Sparrow, thank you very much for thank you for participating tonight. Thank you all for coming out. What a great turnout. Thanks to all the candidates. And please make sure you vote in October, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.